Chapter 4463. Although the Black Eagle Escort Agency was not one of the top 5 escort agencies, it was recognized as one of the top 5 escort agencies. Now that it had lowered its head to the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, it was clear that the latter's strength was extraordinary. Chief Escort Zhao, you're exaggerating. Your Black Eagle Escort Agency is not bad either. Lin Yi and Qi Wenhan looked at each other. In fact, if it were not for Lin Yi's strategy, it would be hard to say who would win the battle. The possibility of the Black Eagle Escort Agency having the last laugh was definitely not lower than that of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Next time, we won't lose. Zhao Shannying smiled confidently. After cupping his hands at Lin Yi and Qi Wenhan, he turned around and returned to the Black Eagle Escort Agency's camp to prepare for the next battle. Ha, this man is really ambitious. He can afford to lose, but he can also afford to lose. Linny looked at his back and nodded. There were many people in the world who could afford to win, but few could afford to lose. This Zhao Shannying should not be underestimated. Yes, this man is indeed not simple. Although he lost to us this time, he will definitely have a place in the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance in the future. Qi Wenhan agreed. Unless it was someone who had a close relationship with him, Lin Yi would not pay too much attention to insignificant people. However, this time was an exception. He was a little interested in the Black Eagle Escort Agency, especially Zhao Shannying. After a short while, an announcement from the judging team shocked everyone again. The Black Eagle Escort Agency challenges the 4 Seas Escort Agency. The crowd was in an uproar. Even a calm person like Lin Yi could not help but be slightly stunned when he heard the announcement. The focus immediately fell on Zhao Shannying. First, he challenged the brilliant super dark horse of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. In the end, he lost by 1 person. In a single battle, he lost 5 experts in the Golden Core realm in the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance. Regardless of whether he died or not, at least these 5 people were definitely crippled in this year's South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meet. Such a price. Even those traditional wealthy families could not afford it, not to mention the newly reorganized Black Eagle Escort Agency. Everyone thought that Zhao Shannying would at least lay low for a period of time and then pick up a soft persimmon to get back the points that he had just lost. Never had he imagined that this fellow would actually be unyielding to such an extent. He didn't even want to take a break and directly issued another challenge. Moreover, the target of his challenge was actually the traditional overlord of the 4 Seas Escort Agency. At this moment, almost everyone had the same question in their minds. Where did Zhao Shannying get his confidence from? Although the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was in the limelight this time, in terms of absolute strength, the traditional overlord, the 4 Seas Escort Agency, was definitely stronger. This was a widely acknowledged fact. Moreover, his Black Eagle Escort Agency couldn't even defeat the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. How dare they take the initiative to challenge the 4 Seas Escort Agency? Wasn't this giving up on themselves? Is he prepared to cut off all means of retreat? He does have the bearing of an ambitious and ruthless character. Lin Yi commented with slight admiration. After losing to the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, the Black Eagle Escort Agency's points had dropped from 220 to 120. If they were to lose to the 4 Seas Escort Agency again, they would only be left with 20 points. Even if they were not directly eliminated, it wouldn't make much of a difference. This result was a huge blow to the Black Eagle Escort Agency, which was determined to return to the ranks of the top 5 escort agencies. Especially for Zhao Shannying, it was simply a disaster. He might not even be able to hold on until the next South Continent Escort Agency Grand Festival. The entire agency might have already collapsed. Under such circumstances, Even if Lin Yi was in Zhao Shanning's position, he might not have the courage to challenge the Four Seas Escort Agency. Although this was the last chance for the Black Eagle Escort Agency to rise again, they had just experienced a defeat. Not to mention the great loss of strength, even their morale was at a low. What were the chances of winning if they challenged the Four Seas Escort Agency now? Trying to use the Four Seas Escort Agency as a stepping stone? Humph, there must be something wrong with this guy's brain. What wishful thinking. Boundless Zhong Hai snorted disdainfully and glanced at Zhao Shanning in the distance. He originally thought that this person had some ability. If he was more sensible, it would not be impossible to help the Black Eagle Escort Agency become one of the top 5. But now, it seemed that Zhao Shanning was just an arrogant person who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. After a while, both sides were ready. When they appeared, there was an uproar in the audience. On the stage were the participating escorts, all of whom were experts in golden core perfection. It was not strange for the Four Seas Escort Agency to send out 5 golden core perfection experts. However, the Black Eagle Escort Agency had just lost 5 golden core perfection experts. Now, they immediately sent out another 5. Such a move was a little shocking. It could be seen that the Black Eagle Escort Agency's slogan of returning to the top 5 escort agencies was not just for show. TCH. So what if you have 5 golden core perfection experts? Even among experts of the same level, the difference in strength is like heaven and earth. A random escort from a grassroots escort agency like you dares to challenge the elite escorts of my Four Seas Escort Agency? Do you think you're worthy? Boundless Sea sneered. Zhao Shanning had great confidence in his escorts, but Boundless Sea, as the undisputed hegemon of the traditional guilds, had even more confidence than Zhao Shanning. No matter how disdainful Boundless Sea was, in the eyes of most people, this escort agency competition was definitely a battle between the strong. The 2 matches in a row were hot-blooded battles of the top 5. The spectators, who had traveled thousands of miles to watch the show, cheered in satisfaction. In reality, this duel did not disappoint the crowd. From the very beginning, the situation on both sides had become extremely tense. Unlike the nimble tactics of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, both sides followed very traditional battle tactics. When the mutual deception and deception on the tactical level had dissipated, the only thing that remained was the desperate fight of the escorts on the arena. It was a bloody battle. This was truly a bloody battle. Blood constantly spilled on the stage. The escorts from both sides were eliminated one after another. Those who were heavily injured and on the verge of death could be considered lucky. Among them, 5 died on the spot. In the end, there was only 1 person left on the stage. This time, it was the Black Eagle Escort Agency who had the last laugh. Looking at the blood-soaked Black Eagle Escort standing on the stage, watching his swaying figure on the verge of collapsing, the entire Cold Magic Plaza fell silent. After 2 tough battles in a row, they had first lost to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Now, they had dramatically regained their dignity against the Four Seas Escort Agency, which was even more powerful. No one knew what to say about such a miraculous turn of events. Chapter 4464. On the other side, Boundless Sea, who was sitting in the middle of the judging panel, watched all of this from afar. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He still couldn't believe it. How could the elites of the Four Seas Escort Agency lose? He could only watch as the Four Seas Escort Agency's points plummeted from 240 to 140. No matter how much Boundless Sea didn't believe it, he could only helplessly accept reality. Sent, Mother Asterisk Cur. This bullshit Black Eagle Escort Agency lost to the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, and now they're venting their anger on the Four Seas Escort Agency. How preposterous! Wah! Boundless Sea gnashed his teeth in anger. His first reaction wasn't to hate Zhao Shannying, but to glare at the distant Lin Yi with hatred. He cursed in his heart. Ling Wan, Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. I won't let you have it easy. I won't. Just you wait. Lin Yi naturally didn't know that this person was such a weirdo. As the head escort of a traditional overlord, he didn't even have this much bearing. Moreover, he was venting his anger on him for no reason. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If he knew what Boundless Sea was thinking right now, his first thought would be that Boundless Sea had gone crazy, that he was hopeless, that he was a classic case of paranoia. Of course, Lin Yi didn't know what Boundless Sea was thinking. He didn't care about what Boundless Sea was thinking. Boundless Sea was the overlord of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance, but in Lin Yi's eyes, he didn't have any weight to speak of. He was just an arrogant passerby. That was all. Some were happy, some were sad. After the intense battle between the Black Eagle Escort Agency and the Four Seas Escort Agency, the fifth round of the escort agency competition continued. As long as there was a chance for them to advance further, no matter how small, no one was willing to fall behind. After all, the ranking of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance would directly determine their business prospects for the next 5 years. This was their rice bowl. And in these battles, for a time, the one in the limelight wasn't the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency or the Four Seas Escort Agency, but the Black Eagle Escort Agency under Zhao Shannying. The Dark Hawk Escort Agency's arena battles were too intense. After fighting head-on against the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Four Seas Escort Agency, although they had used up their right to initiate challenges twice, they still had 2 chances to be challenged. He did not know if someone was deliberately instructing them, or if these escort agencies really wanted to take advantage of the fact that the Black Eagle Escort Agency's vitality was greatly weakened so that they could quickly step on them. In any case, the 2 chances to be challenged were used up in less than an hour. Although the opponents of these 2 battles were not as gimmicky as the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Four Seas Escort Agency, they were not weak either. At least, they were stable escort agencies that were above average. On the other hand, the mysterious Eagle Escort Agency had already used up a total of 10 experts in the Golden Elixir Realm consummation, so it was impossible for them to send out such a strong lineup again. In both battles, there was only 1 expert in the Golden Elixir Realm consummation. However, even so, the Black Eagle Escort Agency still managed to have the last laugh. Even if the team that Zhao Shannying brought up was not a first-line lineup, it was enough to defeat these mid-tier escort agencies. They still appeared to be at ease and unassailable. In the 4 battles, apart from losing to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency at the beginning, the next 3 battles included the Four Seas Escort Agency. They won all of them, and the Black Eagle Escort Agency's points shot up to 420 points. Previously, they were in a precarious position, but now they had entered the top 5 and were in 4th place. Of course, if it weren't for the fact that the other major escort agencies had also obtained a significant number of points, the Black Eagle Escort Agency's results would have been in the top 3 before. On the other hand, as the host of this year's conference, the Four Seas Escort Agency was already in 3rd place after the first 4 rounds. Now that they had suffered a blow from the Black Eagle Escort Agency, even if they won 2 battles in a row, they were still unable to reverse their decline. They were in 5th place with 340 points and were trampled by the Black Eagle Escort Agency. Facing this helpless result, Boundless Sea was seething with anger. If it wasn't for the fact that the escort agency's helmsman had challenged them at the bottom, giving him a chance to make a comeback, and still feeling that he could still control the situation, he would have probably flown into a rage on the spot. In reality, in the 5th round of the Escort Agency Championship, the Four Seas Escort Agency was the same as the other 5 major escort agencies. they had only fought 3 battles and used up 2 of their rights to challenge and 1 of their rights to be challenged. As for the remaining 1 of their rights to be challenged, it was only for show. After all, not every escort agency was as aggressive as the Black Eagle Escort Agency, and not every person in charge of an escort agency was as bold as Zhao Shannying. Asking them to take the initiative to challenge the Four Seas Escort Agency was a foolish thing that would obviously result in them losing points. They might as well just let them die. In comparison, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and the Black Eagle Escort Agency, which were also part of the 5 major escort agencies, were much luckier. Because they were more or less looked down upon, their 2 rights to be challenged were not wasted at all, and they delivered a full 200 points to their doorstep. This made the other 5 escort agencies so envious that their eyeballs were about to bleed. Especially Boundless Sea. He had long since regarded first place as his in the bag. Now that the 5th round of the Escort Agency Championship was about to end, not only was he unable to close the gap between him and the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, but the gap was growing wider and wider. Now, he was being trampled under the feet of the Black Eagle Escort Agency. How could he endure this? Before this, whether it was the Heavens Equal Escort Agency or the Black Eagle Escort Agency, the public's opinion was always mixed. They were not like the traditional powerhouses like the Four Seas Escort Agency, who were full of praise for them. They felt that these 2 agencies were just nouveau riche with no foundation and could only be proud of themselves for a while. But now, no one would harbor such foolish thoughts. Not only did the Black Eagle Escort Agency's points surpass the Four Seas Escort Agencies, more importantly, they had defeated the Four Seas Escort Agency in the highly prestigious Escort Agency Championship, and this was under the premise that they had fought against the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. If this was considered as having no foundation, then what was the Four Seas Escort Agency? As a result, the Black Eagle Escort Agency's strength was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, enough to become the consensus of the public. Everyone knew that this newly reorganized grassy escort agency's strength was not to be underestimated. At the same time, this also proved another thing. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency's strength was even greater. The Four Seas Escort Agency became the Black Eagle Escort Agency's stepping stone, and the Black Eagle Escort Agency became the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's touchstone. The stronger the Four Seas Escort Agency was, the more it proved that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was truly invincible. Chapter 4465. From this, one could see that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's current lead in the leaderboard was due to their true strength, and not some so-called luck. As a matter of fact, there was no logic to the argument of Dodge *T luck. It was not the first time that the South Continent Escort Agency Gala had been held, and the intensity and cruelty of the competition had long exceeded the level of an ordinary competition. Under such circumstances, if a weak escort agency could emerge and laugh all the way to the end purely by sheer luck, was it possible? If that really happened, it could only mean that the 32 South Continent's escort agencies were all fake goods, and none of them were truly wealthy. Otherwise, if there was a truly powerful escort agency, they would not have allowed a clown to take first place. That would be a disgrace to the entire South Continent's escort agency alliance. Accompanied by a wave of heavy sounds of the gong, the 5th round of the escort agency competition finally came to an end. After this round of the Law of the Jungle, the situation on the scoreboard had become even more clear and obvious. The first place on the leaderboard was, without a doubt, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, which had surpassed all the other escort agencies behind it with a ridiculously high score of 1,070 points. After eliminating the Black Eagle Escort Agency with much difficulty, Chi Wen-han still held the precious right to initiate 2 challenges in his hands. Naturally, he would not let it go to waste for no reason. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally chose to make a move on the two middle-ranked escort agencies. Without any surprises or danger, he obtained 200 points. Only then did his points reach the staggering four-digit number of Long Feng Wenxue. In fact, after witnessing the Black Eagle Agency trampling over the Four Seas Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan had thought of adding insult to injury. However, after the previous perilous experience, his father, Qi Mingyuan, was afraid that something might go wrong and was determined not to let him fight personally. The series of fierce battles had already exhausted much of his strength. If Qi Wenhan did not fight personally, it would be difficult for him to win against the flustered and exasperated Four Seas Escort Agency. Even if they had Lin Yi as their coach, it would not be enough unless Lin Yi personally fought. However, that was impossible. After all, there was still another round of challenges for the leader of the escort agency. Lin Yi was in the eye of the storm, and so many people were eyeing him with malicious intent. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency was followed by the Divine Wind Escort Agency and the Great Sky Escort Agency. These two veteran escort agencies were ranked second and third, respectively. The Dark Eagle Escort Agency, which had recently gained strength, was right behind them. He was ranked fourth. As for the ambitious Four Seas Escort Agency, the publicly acknowledged tyrant of South Continent's escort agencies, they had no choice but to face the awkward situation of being in fifth place. Even with Boundless Sea's thick skin, when someone's gaze swept over him, even if it was just a casual glance, he would feel a burning sensation and be too embarrassed to face anyone. All of this was caused by Ling Yi and the Equal Heaven Escort Agency. Boundless Sea's heart bled. He gritted his teeth and cursed viciously. Other than that, there was nothing else he could do. He could only hope that the upcoming good show would go as he wished. At the same time that he killed Ling Yi and the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, his Four Seas Escort Agency would be able to snatch back the limelight and continue to be the overlord of the escort agencies. Although the Four Seas Escort Agency was in an awkward situation in comparison, being able to barely get on the last train of the five great escort agency meant that they were able to keep their last shred of shame. The truly pitiful one was the Southgate Escort Agency. Previously, it had been one of the five great escort agency. But now, after 5 rounds of competition, they were ranked sixth. They had been forced out of the ranks of the five great escort agency, instantly losing the halo of a powerhouse and becoming a second-rate escort agency. They couldn't even cry. According to this ranking, it could be foreseen that the future structure of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance would undergo a huge change. Among this change, only 2 escort agencies would be the true winners. One was the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, and the other was the Dark Eagle Escort Agency. Among them, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's gains were the most exaggerated. This could be seen from the way the managers looked at the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Many of these people were clients of the traditional powerhouses of the Four Seas Escort Agency. However, it looked like they would soon become history. If everything went according to plan, after the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meet, the huge orders placed on the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's head would undoubtedly reach an astronomical figure. It would be at least a few times more than the previous years, perhaps even dozens of times more. The more orders there were, the more spiritual jades there would be. The more spiritual jades there were, the more powerful escorts they would be able to recruit, rapidly increase their strength, and obtain more orders. This was a snowball effect. Once things got on the right track, no one would be able to stop the Heavens Equal Escort Agency from rising. However, before that, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had to overcome another hurdle, the upcoming challenge of the agency's helmsman. Just like the 5th round of the Escort Agency Grand Meet, this was also a duel in which each agency had to bet 100 points. The only difference was that this was a one-on-one challenge specifically targeted at the golden core stage executives of each agency. Moreover, there was no limit to the number of challenges. This sort of competition did not test the agency's overall strength. Instead, it was entirely dependent on the individual's performance. Luck played a huge part. If an agency was unlucky enough to be challenged by the experts of other agencies, the slightest mistake could lead to the agency's collapse. 100 points per battle, and there was no limit to the number of challenges. No matter how many points they had, they would not be able to afford to lose. Although the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's current 4-digit points were daunting, it was hard to say if they could safely survive the next round. Perhaps they would fall from the clouds into the abyss. One moment, they were at the peak of their power, but the next moment, they would be nothing more than a flash in the pan. As long as the dust hadn't truly settled, there were still variables. Even though the top 5 escort agencies were obvious on the leaderboard because of the extra segment at the end, even the losers, like the Southgate Escort Agency, still had a chance of making it to the top 5. Who would be ranked among the top 5 agencies? And who would have the last laugh? Everything was still up in the air. All right, on behalf of the judging panel, I will now announce the rules for the final challenge of the agency's helmsman. Boundless Sea suppressed the hatred in his heart and stood up to announce to the crowd. The rules are very simple. The first challenger will be decided by drawing lots. He can challenge any golden core stage executive of any agency. The winner of each round can choose to continue the challenge. Of course, he can also choose to forfeit. If the winner forfeits, the right to challenge will be transferred to the loser. If the loser chooses to forfeit, then a new lot will be drawn. The crowd broke into a flurry of discussion. At least on the surface, the rules seemed fair. At the very least, the challenges were not unbridled and completely reckless. To be continued. Chapter 4466. If the lot drawing process can be guaranteed to be fair and no one tampered with the results, then it sounds reasonable. Everyone will rely on their own strength and luck. There's nothing much to say. Chi Wen-han stared blankly. He had thought that since this challenge was aimed at his own escort agency, it would be as shameless as possible. He didn't think that this rule would sound so righteous and irresponsible. Chi Wen-han was most worried about his own escort agency being ganged up on. Taking turns to wear them down was something even an immortal made of steel wouldn't be able to handle. However, Boundless Sea's rule basically eliminated the possibility of taking turns to wear them down, unless someone won against him or Ling won and kept challenging them. But this way, the other side would also be fighting continuously. Both sides would be on the same starting line. Who would emerge as the victor would be decided by their fists. Brother Chi, do the other escort agencies also have golden core stage executives? Linny wasn't so optimistic and suddenly asked. This, Chi Wen-han was at a loss for words. The little bit of joy and excitement he felt from winning the 5th round of the escort agency tournament vanished in an instant. With an ugly expression, he said, I don't know the specifics, but it shouldn't be much. Looks like it. Boundless Sea was probably aiming for this from the start. Lin Yi glanced at the nearby Boundless Sea. At the same time, he glanced at Chung Haonan's group of 3, who were giving him strange looks. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that these two groups had some sort of connection. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any connection between the two groups. However, Lin Yi's intuition had always been accurate. He could see some clues from their expressions. A moment later, the judging panel picked out the names of all the golden core stage executives from the escort agencies and announced it to the public. Sure enough, out of all 32 escort agencies, only 12 of them had gold core stage executives, which was less than half of them. Even though the audience had some idea, they were still shocked when they saw this number. Among the 12 escort agencies, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was the most eye-catching. The young Master Chi Wen-han and honorary escort Head Ling Won were both on the list. Apart from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, the other 5 major escort agencies, including the newly established Black Eagle Escort Agency, were not on the list. The remaining 11 escort agencies were mostly middling escort agencies. They were neither too strong nor too weak. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency was also one of them. This kind of situation was not difficult to understand. There were many experts among those powerful escort agencies, and it was possible that any ordinary escort had the strength of the late Gold Core stage and above. This was especially so for the Four Seas Escort Agency and the Black Eagle Escort Agency. The number of Golden Core Paragon experts they had was more than enough to count with 2 hands. As the higher-ups, if they didn't even have the strength of the original infant stage, how could they convince the masses? As for the weaker escort agencies, they were small in scale and didn't have positions such as young head of escort, deputy head of escort, elder, military advisor, and the like. There was no need to set up such positions at all, as it would only result in the decentralization of power. Under normal circumstances, a small escort agency would have at most 1 or 2 other escorts in addition to the chief escort. There were no other senior executives. Although the South Continent Escort Agency Festival was a big event, and most of the escort agencies had sent out their elites, it was impossible for them to leave no one behind. At least one escort would be left behind to take care of the rear. As a result, in the list of escorts reported by most of the smaller escort agencies, there was only the chief escort leading the team. It was like a commander without an army. Since he was the chief escort of an escort agency, he couldn't be an expert at the Golden Core stage. Nascent Soul stage was the minimum requirement, so he naturally wasn't on the list. Moreover, there were some escort agencies that were special, but like the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, they had a young escort. Their strength was most likely at the Golden Core stage, but the problem was that most of them were guarding the rear. They couldn't send people all the way here at the last minute, could they? That wasn't realistic. Even if these escort agencies agreed, the festival couldn't wait that long. There weren't any first-rate escort agencies, nor any low-end escort agencies. The most likely ones to have Golden Core higher-ups were those middling escort agencies. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency was the only exception. This was Boundless Sea's original intention in proposing this challenge. By proposing this rule, an escort agency like the Four Seas Escort Agency, which didn't have any Golden Core higher-ups, was naturally invincible. They were the only ones who could challenge others, while others couldn't do anything to them. They could attack or retreat as they pleased. On the contrary, the 12 escort agencies, including the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, had become the real prey. As long as they were interested, they could pounce and take a bite. If it wasn't enough, they could take a second bite or a third bite. Of course, the prerequisite was that they had the strength to do so. If they weren't strong enough, not only would they not be able to take a bite out of the prey, but they would also be kicked half to death. Chi Wen-han frowned. Although the situation wasn't as bad as he had imagined, it wasn't much better either. Among the 12 prey on the list, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was not only the strongest, but also the one that attracted the most attention. It was almost certain that they would be targeted by others. However, he didn't seem worried at all. Even though he knew that this so-called escort agency leader challenge was aimed at him, he didn't take it to heart. The only thing he cared about was whether he had a chance to kill Wu Bao Liang. Fortunately, he didn't disappoint me. Yi looked at Wu Bao Liang's name on the public list and couldn't help but smile. The conference was about to end, but he still couldn't get a chance to fight Wu Bao Liang. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't anxious at all. After all, who was willing to waste time in the South Continent for Wu Bao Liang. But now, this additional challenge would make him the target of everyone, but at the same time, it gave him a chance to challenge Wu Bao Liang. In comparison, Lin Yi felt that it was a good deal. Anyway, with his current strength, he was absolutely invincible in the Golden Core stage. No matter how many people came to challenge him, they would just be giving away points. It was not worth mentioning at all. Seeing that Lin Yi was so calm, Qi Wenhan couldn't help but be speechless. He admired Lin Yi's strength, but he didn't know how strong Lin Yi was. In the face of such a situation, it was impossible for him not to panic. However, even if he panicked, it was useless. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the Escort Agency Leader Challenge officially began. The first thing to do was to draw lots. 5 judges supervised together, and there were countless pairs of eyes watching from below the stage to ensure that no one could cheat. To be continued. Chapter 4467. The 32 escorts went up on stage to draw lots according to their current rankings to decide who the first challenger would go to. In order to ensure as much fairness as possible, this time's lots were not drawn openly, but in secret. The people in charge of the escort agencies who went up on stage to draw lots didn't know what the lots meant even if they got their hands on them. They could only wait until all the lots were drawn and the judges announced the labels before they could know the results. As a result, even if they were the last to draw lots, no one had any objections. After all, being the first and being the last was the same. What surprised Lin Yi and Qi Wenhan was that Boundless Sea didn't seem to have any intention of tampering with the lots. Although it was indeed difficult to carry out under-the-table operations under the noses of so many people, it should not really be a problem for this self-proclaimed overlord of the South Continent's escort agency, right? Whether it was the process of drawing lots or the result of the drawing, everything seemed normal. It was just a very pure drawing of lots. It was fair. In the end, the 32 escorts raised their lots high up in the air. Boundless Sea announced the results on behalf of the judges. Everyone's eyes focused on an old man in green. This person was called Fang Heng, the head escort of the Blackwater Escort Agency. In terms of experience, he could be considered a veteran of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance. He was one of the veterans when the alliance was first established. However, compared to his solid experience, the Blackwater Escort Agency's strength couldn't be put on the stage. Even if they weren't at the bottom, they were at most below average. They had never even entered the top 15. They had nothing to do with being strong. No one expected that the first challenger would fall into the hands of the Blackwater Escort Agency. They didn't know how this head escort Fang would choose. Even though winning the first challenger meant winning the first chance to eat meat, in most people's eyes, the Blackwater Escort Agency didn't have the strength to eat meat. If they challenged someone else, they might just be giving up points for nothing. The safest choice was to not challenge anyone. In any case, their escort agency didn't have any Golden Core experts, so they could sit back and relax. Right now, they were ranked 18th. This result wasn't bad for the Blackwater Escort Agency. As long as they maintained their stability, they would win. On the other hand, if the Blackwater Escort Agency couldn't restrain their ambition and chose to challenge someone else, then it would be very likely that they would end up being eliminated. Under the gaze of the audience, Fang Heng cleared his throat, stepped forward, and said in a clear voice, "My Blackwater Escort Agency has decided to challenge the Dragon Boat Escort Agency." As he spoke, Fang Heng glanced at Cheng Haonan and the others, and a bone-deep hatred flashed through his eyes. The crowd immediately burst into an uproar. Challenging the Dragon Boat Escort Agency? Was this chief escort Fang crazy? Although the Dragon Boat Escort Agency wasn't a big escort agency and didn't have any outstanding performances in the past, At least in terms of performance in this year's conference, they were definitely not weak. Now that he was ranked 8th, he could be considered to be worthy of praise. If the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and the Dark Eagle Escort Agency hadn't attracted everyone's attention, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would have been in the limelight as well. The Black Water Escort Agency wouldn't have been able to compete with them. Hee. I didn't expect this old escort Fong to be so old and so hot-tempered. He's preparing to take this opportunity to take revenge. Someone in the crowd laughed. That's not surprising. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to swallow it. In the first round of the escort battle, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency killed all 5 of their elite escorts. For the Blackwater Escort Agency, this is a huge blow. Someone who knew the situation explained. The competition has always been this cruel. What's there to be surprised about? Since they can't afford to lose, they shouldn't have come. Then just don't come. Someone snorted disdainfully. That's right. With the Blackwater Escort Agency's meager strength, they're now taking the initiative to challenge the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Isn't it obvious that they want to be trampled on again? Is this old man stupid? Someone laughed coldly and echoed, TSK, TSK. This time the Blackwater Escort Agency is really in danger. The bystanders nodded one after another. Discussions rose one after another. There were those who mocked and ridiculed, those who sympathized with the Blackwater Escort Agency, those who took pleasure in the Blackwater Escort Agency's misfortune, and those who coldly watched from the sidelines. In short, there was no such thing as making a scene. 99% of the people present didn't think the Blackwater Escort Agency would win. Listening to these discussions, Fong Heng's expression was as cold as water. In the first round of the escort battle, because of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's ruthlessness, the entire Blackwater Escort Agency's vitality was greatly damaged. They lost more than half of the few experts they had. They were absolutely irreconcilable enemies. How could he swallow this resentment? This time, he had decided to throw caution to the wind. It didn't matter how many points he had. It was a rare opportunity. The only thing on his mind now was revenge. Although Fong Hung was a little impulsive, he was a veteran of Jianghu in South Continent. He wasn't stupid at all. This challenge by the helmsman of the escort agency was really a rare opportunity for revenge. If it was like the 5-on-5 escort agency competition just now, which tested the overall strength of the entire escort agency, then the Blackwater Escort Agency naturally wouldn't be a match for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. But now it was one-on-one, so it was a different story. Fong Hung pulled over the last elite escort of the Blackwater Escort Agency, an expert at the peak of the Gold Core realm. He excitedly and nervously exhorted him for a long time before finally watching him walk onto the arena. Whether or not he could avenge himself, success or failure depended on this one move. Looking at the challenger of the Blackwater Escort Agency on the arena, Chung Haonan, Long Kiba, and Wu Bao Liang looked at each other and immediately sneered. From the beginning to the end, they didn't put the Blackwater Escort Agency in their eyes at all. They easily killed their opponents. It was like this in the first round, and naturally it would be no exception now. The 3 of them were still worried about how to snatch the right to challenge. They didn't expect the Blackwater Escort Agency to deliver the opportunity to them in the blink of an eye. Heaven was really on their side. Gentlemen, who do you think is better for us to send? Long Kiba immediately asked. He was an expert at the original infant stage, so naturally he wasn't among the challengers. However, Chung Haonan and Wu Bao Liang were both at the peak of the Gold Core realm. Moreover, they were on the list of higher-ups reported by the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Chung Haonan was the second escort leader, and Wu Bao Liang was the military advisor. Of course, Although the challenger sent by the Black Water Escort Agency was an expert at the peak of the Gold Core realm, the three of them didn't put him in their eyes at all. Whether it was Cheng Haonan or Wu Bao Liang, it would be like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife and making a big fuss over a minor issue. Any elite escort from the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would be enough to solve the problem, but the rules didn't allow it. Although this kind of trash isn't worth mentioning, we must obtain the right to challenge this time. We can't afford to lose. Whether it's you or me, we can't underestimate our opponents. Wu Bao Liang and Cheng Haonan looked at each other and said, "To be continued, Chapter 4471, can't wait." Chapter 4468, Military Advisor is right. So, which one of you will go? Long Kiba looked back and forth between the two of them. Then let me do it. Military advisors' martial arts are extraordinary and unpredictable. It's hard to hide. When you make a move later, it'll be easy to scare Ling Yi. If he refuses to fight when we challenge the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, then we'll have to put in more effort. Military advisor should conserve your chi and use it on Ling Yi later. Cheng Haonan suggested. All right, let's do it. Wu Bao Liang nodded and looked at Cheng Haonan in surprise. He thought that since this guy wanted to take revenge for Chung Katian, he would personally fight Ling Yi. After all, only by killing one's enemy would it be satisfying. He did not expect Wu Bao Liang to push the opportunity to him. It was really surprising. Little did he know that this was Cheng Haonan's craftiness. He really wanted to kill Ling Yi, but he did not want to do it himself. After all, Ling Yi's various identities and relationships were there. Even if it was a duel in the arena, Cheng Haonan did not want to be involved in this kind of grudge. Hence, using Wu Bao Liang's knife to kill was the safest and easiest. Wu Bao Liang did not think of this and did not think much about it. Unlike Cheng Haonan, who was a cunning Jianghu boss, he was just a simple evil cultivator. He would kill anyone he wanted to kill without considering the consequences. At most, he would just change places and continue to hide like before. After the three of them discussed, Cheng Haonan immediately represented the Dragon Boat Escort Agency and slowly walked up to the arena to accept the challenge. They actually let this guy go? Aren't they overestimating the Black Water Escort Agency? Qi Wenhan was stunned when he saw this. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Poison Eye Mercenary Group were old enemies. Even though he had not personally fought with Cheng Haonan, he at least knew his approximate strength. On the surface, he was at the Golden Core perfection, but in reality, he was not much weaker than his father. Letting a character like Cheng Haonan deal with a mere Golden Core perfected expert. Wasn't that bullying? Lin Yi was also a little surprised, but he did not say much. Instead, he observed Cheng Haonan's every move. Because of Chung Katian, this person was bound to become his enemy. It was just that this guy had never fought before, so he had never had the chance to see through his strength. This was an opportunity. Whether it was Qi Wenhan or Lin Yi, they both thought that this would be an easy battle. After all, Cheng Haonan was the boss of the Poison Eye Mercenary Group. If he didn't even have this little bit of strength, then it would really be nonsense. However, this battle took an entire half an incense stick's time to finish. The challenger from the Black Water Escort Agency was kicked off the arena by Cheng Haonan by one move, ending the battle. Everyone from the Black Water Escort Agency, especially the chief escort Fang Heng, turned ashen when they saw this. They didn't even need to go closer to take a closer look to know that their escort, who had been kicked off the arena, was definitely going to die. His chest had been pierced through, leaving behind a huge bloody hole through his heart. Fang Heng blacked out. He fainted on the spot, and the people around him became flustered. The entire Black Water Escort Agency was in a mess. Not only did they lose 100 points in this battle, but the most important thing was that this escort was the last elite of the Blackwater Escort Agency. All the elites had been annihilated, and all of them had died at the hands of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. How could they survive this? Chung Haonan watched this scene from the arena with pride, and he grinned without a trace. However, in order to keep a low profile, he didn't say anything. Otherwise, his previous efforts would have been wasted. During the entire process, Chung Haonan didn't show any overwhelming strength. He gave people the feeling that he was just an ordinary Golden Core perfected expert, and there was nothing special about him. He just didn't want to frighten Ling. Haha, this is a good show. If I didn't know that he was the boss of the Poison Eye mercenary group, I might have really been fooled. Lin Yi smiled when he saw this, but he still didn't finish his show. If they were really so anxious, how could his last kick be so clean and decisive? He didn't even give his opponent a chance to breathe. Qi Wenhan curled his lips disapprovingly. Let's see what they are going to do next. I feel that it's time for me to go on stage. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Huh. Qi Wenhan was stunned for a moment, and then reacted. He hurriedly said, Brother Ling, Chung Haonan is not a person to be underestimated. If they really want to challenge him, let me go. Are you his opponent? Lin Yi asked in return. Qi Wenhan couldn't help but choke. He wanted to be more stubborn, but in the end, he could only say honestly, no, although I haven't fought with him directly, I still know my own strength. It's more appropriate to let my father deal with him personally. Then that's it. Lin Yi smiled, patted him on the shoulder, and said, If they are coming for me, Brother Qi, you won't be able to do anything. Instead, you'll die for nothing. Don't worry, I can't guarantee anything else, but I'm confident in this. But Qi Wenhan still wanted to say something, but seeing Lin Yi's determined expression, he knew that he couldn't persuade him otherwise. He could only shut his mouth and say, Okay then, Brother Ling, be careful. If you see that the situation is not good, jump off the stage. It's just that you'll lose some points. The escort agency, being able to reach this stage, is all thanks to you. We are already very satisfied. Even if we lose everything, it's fine. Brother Ling, your safety is the most important. I know. Lin Yi nodded. On the other side, because of Chung Haonan's victory, the right to challenge fell to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Long Kiba didn't hesitate at all, and directly stood up and announced, The Dragon Boat Escort Agency challenges the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. The entire audience was in an uproar, and the originally tepid atmosphere suddenly heated up. A good show was finally about to begin. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency was originally ranked 8th, and after winning 100 points from the Blackwater Escort Agency, their ranking rose by 2 places, surpassing the Southgate Escort Agency to become the 6th. If they were to win points from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, then they would directly enter the top 5 and enter the ranks of the top 5 escort agencies. I knew it would be like this. Lin Yi smiled, and after exchanging a look with Qi Wenhan, he immediately stepped onto the stage. No matter who his opponent was, he had to win this match. The reason was the same as the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's earlier match. Seeing Lin Yi step onto the stage, Chung Haonan and the other 2 were instantly overjoyed. They were just thinking about whether or not they should kill Qi Wenhan first, but they didn't expect that it would be so easy. This guy actually took the initiative to step onto the stage. He was really an idiot who didn't even know he was about to die. Chapter 4469. Military Advisor. Don't be in a hurry to kill him this round. Let him fight a few more rounds. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency has so many points. We can snatch them all away one by one. Long Kiba hurriedly urged. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency had 1,070 points. As long as he challenged them 11 times in a row, he could transfer all these points to himself. By then, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency would be directly eliminated, and the Dragon Boat Agency would become the new hegemon of the escort agencies. No one would be able to compete with them. Yes, killing him in one go is too easy on him. No matter what, we should at least let him be half dead for 8 or 10 rounds. Chung Haonan nodded. No problem. Wu Bao Liang grinned sinisterly. This brat dared to act arrogantly in front of me. If I don't beat the *T out of him this time, I'm not Wu Bao Liang. With that, Wu Bao Liang stood up on the stage with a strange and inexplicable evil aura. He stood in front of Lin Yi not too far away, and just looked at Lin Yi with a pair of triangular yin-yang eyes, neither yin nor yang. At the same time, Lin Yi looked at this guy and could not help but laugh. He was thinking the same thing as his opponent. You can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, but by chance you get what you want without even looking for it. Brat, tell me the trick that hid the darts, and I can spare your life, Wu Bao Liang suddenly said with a sinister smile. Wu Bao Liang suddenly laughed. He had no interest in Lin Yi, and the only thing that bothered him was the previous time he hid the darts. He really couldn't think of any tricks that could hide from his annihilation of all things. You want to know? Guess it yourself, but you don't have much time left. If you die with doubts, I'm afraid you won't be able to rest in peace. Lin Yi replied with a faint smile. But in his heart, Lin Yi didn't relax at all. He had absolute confidence in his own strength, but he would never be blindly arrogant, and he would never underestimate his opponent. Not to mention that he was fighting against the enemy right now. Moreover, he also felt an unusual aura. This evil cultivator, Wu Bao Liang, was not as simple as he thought. Jie, kid, you are very arrogant. Wu Bao Liang laughed unscrupulously. He pointed at Lin Yi and said disdainfully, "But it's okay. If I want to do something, no one can stop me. It's okay if you don't want to tell me the little trick of hiding the darts now. You will take the initiative to tell me later. It will just take a little effort." "Oh, then I'll wait." Lin Yi's face was calm and collected. He was already a dead man in Wu Bao Liang's eyes, but was Wu Bao Liang a living person in his eyes? In terms of strength, both of them were valiant existences that could instantly kill an original infant stage cultivator. It was just that they were wearing a layer of golden core stage. Both of them had absolute confidence in themselves. However, there was one thing that both of them did not know: the true strength of the other party. After all, they had not directly fought against each other. What little he knew before was just hearsay. Before the battle had even begun, the smell of gunpowder was already thick between them. The spectators below the stage were all in high spirits. There was no lack of people with outstanding eyesight among them. Needless to say, Lin Yi, who was in the limelight before, even Wu Bao Liang, who had a strange aura, was by no means an ordinary person in their eyes. This battle, of course, became the focus of the battle. Everyone secretly speculated in their hearts. Since the two people on the stage had such a strong aura, their true strength was naturally not to be underestimated. The executive referee gave the order. A long incense was lit on the side of the stage. As usual, Lin Yi versus Wu Bao Liang. The long-awaited duel between both sides had officially begun. Preemptive strike. Lin Yi took the lead and used the butterfly microsteps. His figure was like a ghost, moving in a very mysterious arc and rapidly approaching Wu Bao Liang. Jie, you talk big. I thought you were strong. In the end, you are just a small fry in the middle stage of Golden Core stage. Even if you jump, how far can you jump? You really disappoint me. Seeing this, Wu Bao Liang laughed strangely. Facing the rapidly approaching Lin Yi, he did not dodge. An evil black aura suddenly emerged from his body, and he raised his hand and punched. Since the opponent had made it clear that he wanted to fight head-on, Lin Yi naturally would not let go of this opportunity. With his strength facing an expert in the Golden Core perfection, it would be difficult for him to be at a disadvantage in a head-on fight. After all, Lin Yi had never been the kind of arrogant person who would underestimate his opponent. A thick layer of fire shadow suddenly covered his legs that were as fast as the wind. Lin Yi did not stop at all and immediately swept out with 1,000 legs of frenzied inferno. An ordinary expert in the Golden Core perfection would not be able to withstand this kick. It was enough to test Wu Baoliang's strength. Bang! On one side was Lin Yi's 1,000 legs of frenzied inferno, and on the other side was Wu Baoliang's strange black fist. Accompanied by the muffled sound of iron bones colliding, a monstrous wave of qi suddenly set off on the arena. Everyone's expression suddenly changed. These two people were really strong. Amidst the shock waves, a figure suddenly flew out of the ring and landed on the edge of the ring. If it wasn't for this person's quick reflexes and punching into the ring's floor to increase the resistance, he would have fallen off the ring. In other words, the outcome of this duel was almost decided in a single move. Brother Ling. Qi Wenhan's eyes suddenly widened. At the same time, everyone in the Equal of Heaven escort agency was also shocked. This was because the figure that was sent flying was actually Lin Yi. Because of all the previous magical deeds, the Equal of Heaven escort agency's confidence in Lin Yi could be said to be unparalleled, even to the point of blind worship. After all, this was an existence that could cripple an early nascent soul stage master, like Old Kong. Even Qi Wenhan, who had the title of Invincible Golden Core Stage, felt inferior now that he was facing an expert in the Golden Core Stage. How could he lose? However, such an invincible person was actually sent flying by Wu Baoliang, who was full of evil aura. Qi Wenhan did not believe it. Qi Mingyuan did not believe it. Housekeeper Song did not believe it. And everyone in the Equal of Heaven escort agency did not believe it. However, the truth was right in front of them, and they had to believe it. It seemed that Lin Yi really was not Wu Baoliang's opponent. Qi Wenhan was so anxious that he was jumping up and down. He could give up the points, but he could not let anything happen to Lin Yi. Just like what was said before, if there was no other way, he could take the opportunity to jump off the arena and admit defeat. This way, at least, he could ensure his safety. Unfortunately, this kind of thing was destined to not be in line with Lin Yi's character. At this moment, in the arena, Lin Yi stabilized his body and stood up. Apart from some numbness in his legs, he did not suffer any serious injuries. He just looked a little embarrassed. This guy's strength is actually no less than a mid-nascent soul stage master. Lin Yi looked at Wu Baoliang from afar and suddenly felt a chill in his heart. Chapter 4470. Lin Yi did not expect Wu Baoliang, an inhumane evil cultivator, to have such exaggerated strength. Even with his mental fortitude, he could not help but be shocked. Even though Lin Yi had always been cautious, he was still a little careless this time. After all, in the minds of ordinary people, the evil cultivator's strength was indeed amazingly fast, but they often did not have any foundation. Most of them only had a superficial level, and there were not many who could maintain a normal level, let alone challenge someone of a higher level. Little did he know that even among the evil cultivators, Wu Baoliang was definitely an anomaly. Just like Lin Yi, he could not be judged by common sense. How about it? It's not too late to back out now. Kid, are you going to tell me about the hidden darts trick? Wu Baoliang sneered and said disdainfully, "So persistent? Guess it yourself." Lin Yi suddenly laughed. Putting aside his identity as an evil cultivator, Wu Baoliang's spirit of getting to the bottom of the matter was rare. People who were persistent in studying were generally not simple people. It could be seen that it was not without reason that Wu Baoliang had the strength he had today. TSK. You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin, right? Since you're so stubborn, I might as well be a good person and fulfill your wish. As Wu Baoliang spoke, the black gas emitted from his body suddenly became thicker, like billowing black smoke, instantly soaring into the sky. Seeing this, the people below immediately exclaimed one after another. They looked at each other and discussed animatedly. There was no lack of knowledgeable people in the crowd. If it was another occasion, they might have quickly realized that Wu Baoliang was actually an evil cultivator. But now, no one had reacted. After all, this was the South Continent Escort Association's event, and everyone present was a righteous expert. Those evil cultivators would definitely be killed if they saw the light of day. Even if they were crazy and courted death, they would never dare to come to such a place. After discussing for a while, the final conclusion that everyone came to was surprisingly consistent. Wu Baoliang should be an extremely rare person with a mutated spiritual root, a cultivator with at least 5 conventional spiritual root attributes. There had never been a case of black gas emitting from his body, so it could only be an endless stream of mutated spiritual root attributes. The world was big, and there were all sorts of strange things, especially in the South Continent Sea, where all sorts of people were mixed together. People from all walks of life could be seen everywhere, and there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers everywhere. The sudden appearance of a mysterious expert was a common occurrence, and everyone was already used to it. They would never have guessed that Wu Baoliang was not a mutated spiritual root at all. He was an evil cultivator through and through. He actually dared to openly appear in the South Continent Escort Agency's grand gathering, and he even dared to enter the arena and scrupulously. There was a distance of 150 feet between them. Lin Yi looked at Wu Baoliang warily. The thick black gas on Wu Baoliang's body gave him an inexplicable feeling of fear. Even though he knew that the other party was a heretic cultivator. However, even Lin Yi could not determine whether the black aura was a characteristic of the evil cultivator, or if Wu Baoliang really had a mutated spiritual root. No matter what, at least one thing was certain. This black gas was extremely dangerous. Lin Yi was on high alert as he confronted his opponent. At the same time, he recalled the scene from before and analyzed it. He was thinking of countermeasures. Wu Baoliang's fist, that was covered in black gas, clearly did not use his full strength, but its power was simply shocking. Lin Yi's raging flame, 1,000 legs, could not be matched head-on. If he had not used his vital energy to protect his body in time, his entire leg would have been crippled. Looking at the sneering Wu Baoliang, Lin Yi suddenly felt a sense of crisis. From the moment he broke through to the gold core stage until now, he had experienced a lot of risks, especially when he faced many nascent soul stage masters. However, to be honest, Lin Yi really did not feel any sense of crisis. Instead, he unknowingly had a tendency to inflate his ego a little. After all, he was the strongest gold core stage master, who had a perfect breakthrough. Especially when facing nascent soul stage masters, he almost never suffered a loss. Instead, he repeatedly gained the upper hand. If this situation continued for a long time, anyone would become inflated. If he was a little more arrogant, he might even feel that he was invincible. Of course, Lin Yi would not be so stupid and arrogant, but it was inevitable that he was overconfident. Otherwise, he would not have felt that he could defeat Wu Baoliang for no reason before he fought with him. Fortunately, it was not too late to realize this. Cultivation was to cultivate the mind. If Lin Yi continued to cultivate with this mentality without realizing it, when he reached the nascent soul stage or even higher realms, it was very likely that it would evolve into an inner demon. If it was light, it would be difficult to improve. If it was heavy, he would go berserk. That would be really troublesome. Therefore, Lin Yi really had to thank Wu Bao Liang for letting him see himself again. You talk so tough, but why don't you dare to make a move? Are you afraid of being beaten up? Are you ready to hide like a turtle? Wu Bao Liang saw Lin Yi's expression as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He grinned proudly and said ferociously, "Since you don't dare to fight, then I will take the initiative to send you on your way." Violent Sand, Thousand Explosive Fist. As soon as he finished speaking, the black gas on Wu Bao Liang's body became more and more rampant. It spread out and almost enveloped half of the arena. At the same time, wherever the black gas passed, the yellow sand on the arena and the surrounding ground was suspended in the air. It whistled and was sucked into the black gas, forming a monstrous sandstorm. Because the speed was too fast, the sound of breaking through the air could be heard one after another. It was really frightening. Lin Yi suddenly felt a chill in his heart. The punch just now was just a small test. This was Wu Bao Liang's real strength. Although he had not experienced the specific power of this move, he could see from this strange and evil formation that it was definitely not a small matter. In the black gas storm, Wu Bao Liang's figure was faintly discernible. Only the pair of triangular yin-yang eyes remained clear, with a trace of inexplicable terror. It was as if a demon had descended, and no one dared to look directly at it. With a sneer, Wu Bao Liang slowly punched at Lin Yi. In an instant, the black gas swept towards Lin Yi with the sandstorm. Qi Wenhan and the others in the arena were anxious when they saw this. If it was another open space, even if they could not win, there would at least be a chance to escape. However, it was a duel in the arena. The space was so small, and the black gas storm was pressing down on him. At this moment, Lin Yi did not even have a chance to turn around. Without any suspense, Lin Yi's figure was instantly swallowed by the black gas storm. The audience in the arena exclaimed. At this time, it was impossible to see the situation in the arena with their eyes alone. They could only use their divine sense to perceive. Even so, they could only detect a vague idea. To be continued. Chapter 4471. The black sand created by Wu Bao Liang. Even though it could not completely isolate the divine sense like the sea miasma, could more or less achieve some similar effects. Isolating divine sense, this was a very exaggerated thing for ordinary cultivators. The vast majority of people could not reach such a height even in their lifetime. This required a very high talent for divine sense, and at the same time, diligent cultivation to have a trace of a chance to achieve it. Everyone was amazed. Wu Bao Liang, who suddenly appeared out of nowhere, was unknown and had no reputation at all. They did not expect him to be such a genius. At this moment, in the black sand, Lin Yi did not give up. This was not his style at all. Although it was difficult to completely see everything around him with the divine sense, with Lin Yi's keen perception and the jade pendant, it was enough to see through the potential danger in advance. The moment he was shrouded in the black sand, Lin Yi immediately made a judgment. The role of the black gas was mostly to block perception and isolate the divine sense. It should not be too much of a threat. The real fatal thing should be the hidden sand that gathered into a fierce flow. Therefore, even if it looked extremely dangerous, as long as he could avoid the sand and fierce flow hidden in the black gas, he should be able to break the opponent's 1,000-sand-bursting fist. Of course, it was easy to say, but to actually do this was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, because there were not just one or two strands of violent sand currents hidden in the black gas, but hundreds and thousands of them. Moreover, they were extremely fast. Under the premise that the perception of the divine sense was blocked, It was easier said than done to completely avoid it. Even if he had the jade pendant, it would not work because there were dangers in all directions. However, since he was trapped in the opponent's black sand, Lin Yi could not just give up, let alone sit there and wait for death. No matter how slim the chance was, he had to give it a try. Using the butterfly subtle steps with all his strength, Lin Yi's figure kept flashing back and forth under the black veil, like a ghost. Erratic and erratic. You still don't give up? Then I'll play with you. Wu Bao Liang's trademark sneer sounded especially ear-piercing in the black sand. He hadn't even finished his sentence when the hundreds of streams of sand rushed towards Lin Yi from all directions. The sound of the sand breaking through the air was getting sharper and sharper, making one's scalp go numb. If it was someone who wasn't brave enough, they'd probably be scared half to death, not to mention dodging the black energy and sand. However, Lin Yi was still calm and composed as he faced the encirclement of hundreds of violent sandstorms. Ordinary people would have already lost their heads out of fear, not knowing what to do. However, Lin Yi's figure flickered in and out of sight, flashing and moving. It was clear that the wild sand and vicious currents surrounded him from all directions without any gaps to speak of. However, Lin Yi relied on his extremely agile movements to squeeze out a gap and successfully avoided the first round of encirclement. This time, Wu Bao Liang, who was still a little careless and thinking of playing a cat and mouse game, was really shocked. The Thousand Violent Sand Fist was his strongest trump card. In the past, once he used it, he would definitely be able to easily kill his opponent. Even when facing an opponent in the nascent soul stage, it was still effective. He didn't expect that he would have to deal with a mere middle stage gold core stage. There were some twists and turns. No wonder this kid could cripple an expert in the early nascent soul stage like Old Calm. It seemed that he did have some skills. However, this was still far from enough. Wu Bao Liang's triangular yin-yang eyes condensed a murderous aura. Wherever the black gas shrouded was a domain that he could control with his mind. The violent sandstorms continued to swirl rapidly around Lin Yi's body, and soon formed a huge sand whirlpool, with Lin Yi right in the center of the whirlpool. Unable to advance or retreat, Lin Yi suddenly had an ominous feeling in his heart. Even if he didn't touch the sand, he knew that it must be extremely dangerous. It was definitely not as simple as ordinary yellow sand, as long as the speed of anything reached the extreme. Even if it was just a small grain of sand, it could easily kill people. This was the principle of flying leaves and flowers, let alone such a turbulent sand whirlpool. In this situation, no matter how exquisite and agile Lin Yi's movements were, it was impossible for him to pass through the sand whirlpool unscathed. Before the other party attacked, there was only one way to deal with it, and that was to force his way out. At this time, there must be no hesitation. Lin Yi knew this very well. Without saying a word, he immediately circulated his qi and raised his hand to perform the 30 styles of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm. This was his most powerful martial arts skill at the moment. Whether he could break through the encirclement or not, success or failure depended on this move. Boom! The people outside the arena only heard a sudden bang. As for what happened in the arena, they couldn't sense it clearly. They could only look at each other in dismay. In the middle of the black sand, Wu Bao Liang's expression suddenly changed. This kid actually broke through his sand whirlpool. For a moment, even Wu Bao Liang had to look at Lin Yi in a new light. The previous dodging and maneuvering could be said to be a trick, but this was a completely head-on collision. Even those experts at the peak of the early nascent soul stage would find it difficult to have such amazing destructive power. This Lin Yi, who came out of nowhere, seemed to be really extraordinary. After blasting out a passage with one palm, Lin Yi suddenly breathed a sigh of relief and quickly took the opportunity to retreat. If even this did not work, then he would really be in danger today. With Lin Yi's super trump card, no matter how strong the opponent was, as long as he was given enough time to accumulate power, he would definitely be able to laugh in the end. There was no doubt about this. However, at this moment, suddenly there was a cold shout from Wu Baoliang in the distance. Explode! Instantly, Lin Yi's hair stood on end. He suddenly realized that this move was not the Raging Sand Fist, but the Raging Sand Thousand Explosive Fist. Everything before was just a preparation. The most important thing was the word explode, which was the real fatal part. Unfortunately, it was already too late for him to come to this realization at this moment. Boom, 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 the continuous loud sounds were like dense firecrackers, instantly resounding throughout the entire Demon Lung Square. Everyone in the arena was shocked, and they looked at the arena in horror. They were so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths for a long time. Although they still did not know what was happening in the arena due to the black chi. There were many knowledgeable people present. Even if they used their toes to guess the power behind such a strong tremor, they could guess it. Chapter 4472. Qi Wenhan and the others were all tensed up, staring at every movement in the ring. Even if they couldn't see what was going on inside, they wouldn't let go of the slightest change, fearing that something might happen to Lin Yi. Greater than over equal to 4 all, greater than over equal to 4 all. A moment later, a figure in a sorry state suddenly fell out of the ring. Everyone's worries turned into reality. The person who fell out was Lin Yi. Brother Ling, how are you? Qi Wenhan hurriedly shouted and rushed over. At this moment, Lin Yi's whole body was surrounded by black gas, giving people the feeling that he had been corroded by the black gas. Moreover, there were burn marks everywhere, and some places were even badly mutilated. It was a shocking sight. The audience was in an uproar when they saw this. This battle that no one could see actually ended with Lin Yi, who was in the limelight, being blown out of the ring miserably. It was somewhat unexpected, but also reasonable. Qi Wenhan was at a loss of what to do. Like a headless fly, he circled around Lin Yi, not knowing what to do for a moment. He did not know how to treat it, and he could not even see what kind of injury Lin Yi had suffered and how serious the injury was. He could only stare at the side, rubbing his hands and feeling anxious. Fortunately, Lin Yi's injury was not as serious as everyone thought, although he looked miserable at first glance, and his injuries were not light. It was not to the point of serious damage to his vitality. At least he could still sit up and heal himself. Of course, this was mainly because he used a lot of qi to protect his body, and also because Wu Baoliang did not want to kill him. For Lin Yi, as long as he had the physical strength to heal, it was not a big deal. Especially if his muscles and bones were not injured, it would only take a moment for him to recover to his peak. Lin Yi knew that it was not a big problem, but his current state was more than miserable in the eyes of others. He was simply a cripple on the verge of death. There were wounds all over his body. Moreover, there were traces of ominous black gas. If this was not a sign that he was about to die, what was it? The black gas on the arena dissipated, and Wu Baoliang's figure reappeared in front of everyone. Compared to before, everyone looked at him with more respect. This was the treatment that an expert deserved. I declare that the Dragon Boat Escort Agency has won. You can now challenge the next opponent. The referee announced the result. As a result, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency had snatched 100 points from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and moved up 1 rank. It had risen from 6th to 5th and had become one of the top 5 escort agencies, as it wished. The escort agency that had been squeezed out of the top spot was the most popular escort agency overlord, the Four Seas Escort Agency. Seeing the real-time changes in the rankings, Boundless Sea, who was sitting in the middle of the referee group, had his face turn as black as the bottom of a pot. His face was so gloomy that it was dripping water. Indeed, no matter if it was a challenge from the leader of this escort agency. It was Wu Bao Liang who stood out to deal with Ling Yi. All of this had been personally planned by Boundless Sea, and it had achieved the desired results. However, his Four Seas Escort Agency had been pushed out of the top 5 by the Dragon Boat Agency. This wasn't part of Boundless Sea's plan. In the beginning, he had planned for his Four Seas Escort Agency to reach second place after the 5th round of the competition. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to his wishes. The sudden rise of the Black Eagle Escort Agency had ruined his plan. Not only had they failed to reach second place, they had fallen to 5th place instead. And now, they had even made such a blunder. The great escort agency overlord had actually been pushed out of the top 5 escort agencies. Seeing this embarrassing ranking on the rankings, Boundless Sea felt like his face had been smashed to pieces. He couldn't go out and meet people anymore. However, now that things had reached this point, it was too late for Boundless Sea to regret it. Moreover, the good show had only just begun. As long as he continued to develop according to his plan, the Four Seas Escort Agency still had a chance to make a comeback. Boundless Sea could only bury his head like an ostrich. He couldn't help but console himself. Right now, he was only temporarily being stepped on by someone else. A bit of awkwardness was unavoidable, but only the one who had the last laugh would be the true winner. At this moment, apart from Chi Wen-han and the others who were circling around Lin Yi, everyone else's gazes were focused on Wu Bao Liang. They only wanted to know one question: who was he going to challenge next? The 12 escort agencies on the leaderboard were all panicking, especially the Golden Core experts who were on the leaderboard. They were afraid that their agency's name would jump out from Wu Bao Liang's mouth next. Losing points was a small matter, but they were afraid of losing their lives. I've decided to challenge the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Wu Bao Liang sneered from the corner of his eyes. As soon as these words came out, the crowd went into an uproar again. They had already won once, yet they weren't satisfied. They actually wanted to challenge again. Wasn't this clearly showing that they wanted to destroy the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency? Previously, everyone thought that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was in the limelight. Their faces were filled with unconcealable envy and jealousy. However, after hearing Wu Bao Liang's words, their envy and jealousy instantly disappeared. Instead, they looked at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency with sympathy. In front of Wu Bao Liang and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was not a super dark horse. They were purely a piece of juicy meat. Looking at their stance, they definitely wouldn't rest until they devoured this piece of meat. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's tribulation had only just begun. However, in any case, it was the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency that was suffering. It had nothing to do with the rest of the crowd. Seeing the 2 escort agencies from the Wayark Sea territory fight to the death, they were happy to watch the show. There were many people who were gloating over their misfortune, looking at the referee's expressions, especially Boundless Sea's sneer. As if they were watching a good show, Chi Mingyuan couldn't help but feel anxious. Now that Ling Wan was heavily injured, he definitely couldn't go on stage. That meant that the only Golden Core expert left in the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was Chi Wen-han. However, even Ling Wan wasn't Wu Bao Liang's opponent, let alone his son, Chi Wen-han. Wasn't this asking him to go on stage and die? Head escort, hi, you've racked your brains to come up with such an unfair challenge. Not only will you be criticized for no reason, but you'll also end up working for someone else. Your 4C's escort agency won't get any benefits at all. Don't you think you're too stupid? Qi Mingyuan looked coldly at Boundless Sea. Even a clay figurine would have some anger, let alone a formidable person like Qi Mingyuan. Now that things had developed to this point, he wasn't afraid of publicly shedding all pretense of cordiality. Chapter 4473. We're all smart people here. We know who's right and who's wrong. Why are you still putting on an act and trying to cover things up? My Heaven's Equal Escort Agency isn't doing well, but I'm afraid your 4C's escort agency is going to end up with nothing. Humph, you're being stepped on by others. What a joke. Qi Mingyuan sneered. According to the rules of the competition, the 4C's escort agency, which didn't have any Golden Core experts, were undefeatable. However, it was difficult for them to get a share of the spoils. Unless the winner, like the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, gave up on the right to challenge and drew lots again, they wouldn't have a chance. However, the chances of this happening were minuscule. If things continued like this, the 4C's escort agency could only watch from the sidelines. They could only watch as the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's points rose higher and higher, until the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's points rose higher and higher. They couldn't do anything about it. It was obvious that the 4C's escort agency, which had fallen out of the top 5, had become the first victim. Next would be the Black Eagle Escort Agency, the Great Sky Escort Agency, and the Divine Wind Escort Agency. Hearing this, even Zhao Bufan and the others looked at Boundless Sea with unfriendly gazes. They weren't like the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, who was being chased around. Even if their points were affected, it wouldn't be too big. However, the problem was that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had suddenly risen up and stepped on their heads. Now, even the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was stepping on their faces. Who could stand that? They were one of the 5 great escort agency, a traditional powerhouse. How could they tolerate a grassroots escort agency with no background? One by one, they were stepping on their heads. Did they even have any face left? Everyone suddenly realized that Boundless Sea wasn't just shooting himself in the foot. Moreover, their feet were also smashed into the ground. Ha! If you insist that I'm targeting your Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, aren't you thinking too much? No matter what you think, I have a clear conscience. The rules of the competition are right there. It's fair to everyone. As long as you have the strength, everyone has a chance. If you feel like you're at a disadvantage, that only means that you're not strong enough. You can't blame anyone else. Boundless Sea said righteously. Humph. Since Chief Escort C is so unyielding, then I have nothing else to say. Let me give you a word of advice. Justice is in the hearts of the people. A clown will never achieve anything. Qi Mingyuan gave Boundless Sea a deep look and didn't say anything else. You should return those words to your Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. I feel like it's a short-lived epiphany, but I think it's quite appropriate. Boundless Sea sneered. Seeing Qi Mingyuan and Zhao Bufan's unfriendly expressions, Boundless Sea's previous gloominess disappeared. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. A bunch of ignorant fools. Do you really think that the Dragon Boat Escort Agency will have the last laugh? Do you really think this chief escort's brain is flooded with water? With the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's fatal weakness in his hands, Boundless Sea wasn't afraid of them increasing their points. Even if they did, it wouldn't matter. When the time came, he would release this bomb and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency would lose all of their qualifications. They were nothing to worry about. However, right now, his 4C's escort agency was in 6th place. Even if the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency were all eliminated, they would only fall back to 4th place. At most, he would fall back to fourth place. The other escort agencies above him would still take advantage of him. Before that happened, he had to think of a countermeasure. Boundless Sea wasn't going to do something as stupid as giving someone else a gift. Uncle Song, I'll leave the matters of the escort agency to you. I'll go up and fight this Wu Bao Liang. Qi Wenhan's expression was cold. After giving this order to housekeeper Song, he immediately prepared to go up and fight. Now that Lin Yi was injured and couldn't go up, he was the only one left. If he didn't go up, who would? Therefore, this time, neither Qi Mingyuan, who was sitting among the judges, nor Steward Song, who was sitting beside him, had any intention of stopping him. Even if they knew that it was dangerous, even if they could be beaten to death, they still had to go. The people of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency were never cowards, not to mention that Qi Wenhan was the young master. The wind was howling, and the water was cold. Qi Wenhan seemed to have the determination to die. He walked towards the arena step by step. However, just as he was about to step onto the arena, Lin Yi's voice suddenly came from behind him. "Brother Qi, wait." "Brother Ling?" Qi Wenhan was overjoyed. He stopped and turned his head to look at Lin Yi with concern. He asked, "Brother Ling, how are your injuries? Are they serious?" "They're fine. It's not a big deal." Lin Yi grinned. After using his qi to heal him, the injuries that Wu Bao Liang gave him had mostly healed. They would soon be completely cured. That's good, that's good. Qi Wenhan breathed a sigh of relief. If something really happened to Lin Yi this time, with his personality, he would definitely blame himself to death. Fortunately, Lin Yi's current condition was not bad. It did not seem like he was faking it. Qi Wenhan nodded at Lin Yi. He then turned around and walked towards the arena again. The stone in his heart had finally been lifted. His footsteps were calm and fearless. Even Wu Bao Liang, who was in the arena, raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw this. "Brother Qi, I want to get back at him myself. Don't fight with me," Lin Yi suddenly said from behind. Qi Wenhan stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Lin Yi with a troubled expression. If Lin Yi had said something else, he would have rejected it without a second thought. After all, he was the young master of the escort agency. He had the right to decide who would fight and who would not. Lin Yi had already done so much for the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency and was still injured. How could he let his benefactor continue to fight while injured? Qi Wenhan could not do something like biting the hand that fed him. However, Lin Yi now said that he wanted to get back at Wu Bao Liang himself. The implication was that this was a personal grudge between him and Wu Bao Liang. In particular, he had been preparing to attack Wu Bao Liang for a long time and had waited until today. Under such circumstances, even Qi Wenhan could not intervene. But Qi Wenhan frowned, not knowing what to say. He wouldn't agree to let Lin Yi fight again with an injury like that. However, "No, but Brother Qi, you must listen to me this time." Lin Yi immediately interrupted. He did not have time to convince Qi Wenhan, so he could only use this stubborn method to solve the problem. Seeing that Lin Yi's expression was extremely firm and that he would not give up until he achieved his goal, Qi Wenhan was completely helpless. He could not let Lin Yi fight, but he could not go against Lin Yi's wishes either. He was in a dilemma. "Hey, how much longer are you going to delay? Are you going to fight or not? Are the people of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency all such cowards that they don't even have the courage to fight?" Wu Bao Liang crossed his arms and made sarcastic remarks in the arena. To be continued, are 655. Chapter 4474. Of course, he hoped that Lin Yi would take the field again, but if it was Qi Wenhan, then it wouldn't matter. At most, He would just have to spend a little more effort to get rid of the young master of the Equal of Heaven escort agency. Chi Wenhan's expression froze, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He was about to take the field, but when he saw Lin Yi's gaze, he held back. After spending some time together, he more or less understood Lin Yi's personality. Although he was usually easy to talk to, he was actually very opinionated. If he really decided to do something, even 10 bulls wouldn't be able to hold him back. I'll still take the field for the Equal of Heaven escort agency. But according to the rules, I should be able to rest for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, right? Lin Yi said lightly. Sure. The executive judge glanced at Lin Yi. There were already people lighting incense at the side of the field. Only half of the time had passed, so Lin Yi could at least rest for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Humph, all right then, I'll let you live for another half an hour. Wu Bao Liang laughed coldly. He knew very well how terrifying the power of the 1,000-sand bursting fist was, so he wasn't worried about whether Lin Yi would be able to recover. It was simply impossible. In fact, if he hadn't deliberately held back at the last moment, Lin Yi would already be a corpse by now. How could he possibly live until now? Brother Ling, then I'll leave it to you. But again, don't force yourself. You can lose your points, but you can't have anything happen to you. Chi Wenhan could only helplessly remind him. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Lin Yi nodded, then closed his eyes again. To outsiders, it seemed like he was just taking advantage of the last half an incense stick of time to sharpen his spear. Little did they know, after the last half an incense stick of time, Lin Yi had already recovered to his peak condition. The reason why he continued to meditate on the ground, other than to confuse Wu Bao Liang and the outsiders, was that Lin Yi actually had another more important thing to do. He was continuously simulating Wu Bao Liang's 1,000-sand bursting fist in his mind. Although Wu Bao Liang was an evil cultivator, Lin Yi had never really put this person in his eyes before, but after experiencing the battle just now, he had to admit that this evil cultivator was very strong, especially his violent sand 1,000 bursting fist. The power was really not to be underestimated. This could be seen from the fact that Lin Yi could not completely penetrate the opponent after using the 30 moves of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm just now. The opponent's realm was only at the peak of the Gold Core realm, but the power displayed was at the middle stage of the nascent Soul realm. The exaggerated and heaven-defying degree was even comparable to the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm that Lin Yi relied on the most. More importantly, Wu Bao Liang's violent sand 1,000 explosive fist was not only powerful, but it was also very practical. Unlike other killing moves that required corresponding timing and conditions, as long as the mad sand 1,000 bursting fist was used, the opponent would basically be at their wits' end. Whether it was used for 1 versus 1 or 1 versus many, it was a rare and excellent choice. In short, this was a rare killing move, so Lin Yi decided to take it for himself. After suffering from the opponent's killing move, he actually wanted to learn it on the spot. This kind of thing was completely ridiculous in the eyes of others. There was no maneuverability at all. Putting aside the fact that he did not have the attributes and conditions to cultivate the opponent's killing move, even if the conditions were suitable, it was easier said than done to cultivate it. People who painstakingly cultivated for decades might only have a small success, but you want to cultivate it in less than the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Is this possible? How is this brain damaged? It's like putting a brain in the water. However, it was unrealistic to use it on others, but if it was used on the 5 elements and 7 attributes. Moreover, it was used on Lin Yi, who also had the real spiritual root. It was very different. With such a strong and majestic foundation, no matter what the opponent's move was, Lin Yi could use the martial skills that he already knew, coupled with the opponent's unique activation method, to deduce and combine it bit by bit. After gradually mastering and familiarizing himself with it, he could really take it for himself. He had done this kind of thing many times in the past. The Mad Fire 8 trigrams palm was a ready-made example. If he wanted to quickly improve his strength, he had to walk on 2 legs. Improving his realm was one thing, but on the other hand, his martial skills had to be constantly evolved. Both were indispensable, and Lin Yi clearly understood this. Of course, the deduction and combination of any martial skill was a very complicated and difficult thing. The more exquisite and powerful the martial skill, the more difficult it was to deduce. Even though Lin Yi was experienced facing Wu Bao Liang's mad Sand Thousand Bursting Fist, he still had a lot of things to do. Over and over again, it was like playing a movie in Lin Yi's mind. He kept replaying the situation on the arena just now. He disassembled the opponent's Mad Sand Thousand Bursting Fist bit by bit, combined it with his own understanding and realizations, and then put it back together bit by bit. If the conditions allowed it, the best way was to deduce it in his mind for a period of time, and then try it out on the spot. Only then could he really know whether his deduction was successful or not, and where the problem was. However, with so many people watching, Lin Yi obviously did not have the conditions to do so. He could only silently rehearse in his mind and use his rich experience to judge whether the deduction was successful or not. This was a really difficult technical task, and ordinary people could not do it. In the end, after the Mad Sand Thousand Bursting Fist was disassembled and practiced countless times, it was finally successfully reassembled in Lin Yi's mind. However, it had a different appearance. Once it was really used, it was probably very different from the original version of Wu Bao Liang's Mad Sand Thousand Bursting Fist. This could not be helped. Until now, Lin Yi could not completely confirm whether the black gas on Wu Bao Liang's body was a characteristic of an evil cultivator or an extremely rare mutated spiritual root. Therefore, even with his 5 elements and 7 attributes, there was no way to completely imitate the black gas. The time it took to burn a stick of incense wasn't long, and when the last bit of incense ash fell, the spectators immediately regained their spirit. Although 99% of them thought that Lin Yi was dead for sure, watching a battle of life and death like this still gave them an inexplicable sense of excitement, making them unable to watch it anymore. Wu Bao Liang squinted at Lin Yi below the arena. He was about to mock him, but before he could speak, Lin Yi had already stood up and walked into the arena. Chapter 4475. Actually, whether I say it or not, you won't kill me, right? Lin Yi smiled calmly, without the slightest hint of nervousness or fear. It was as if the defeat just now did not affect him at all. Not only did it not affect him mentally, but it also did not affect him physically. He looked like he was in his best condition. Plus, not only were the audience stunned, but even Wu Bao Liang was slightly stunned. Although he said he was holding back, he had actually used at least 70% of the 1,000 Sand Bursting Fist power. It was enough to kill an early nascent Soul Realm Master, let alone a middle Gold Core Realm Master. Even though he knew that his opponent was not an ordinary middle Gold Core Realm Master, in Wu Bao Liang's opinion, even if Lin Yi did not die, he would definitely be seriously injured. He could force himself to walk into the arena, but how could he still be so confident and calm? Could this guy be an actor? Even at this time, he could still pretend to be so flawless? Wu Bao Liang could not help but be a little suspicious. He suspected that Lin Yi was deliberately mystifying, but he did not show it on his face. I won't kill you? Kid, where do you get this confidence from? Whether I kill you or not, it all depends on me. If I kill you, I can still challenge the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and get the points. Do you think anyone can stop me? Wu Bao Liang sneered disdainfully. Yes, I can. Lin nodded seriously. As soon as he finished speaking, the audience burst into laughter. Wu Baoliang was laughing so hard that he could not straighten his back for a long time, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He had just been beaten black and blue, but in the blink of an eye, he dared to say that he could stop him. This kid's skin was really thick. Interesting. This is really interesting. Wu Baoliang laughed and raised his hand to point at Lin Yi. Then you can bet your life to stop me. This time, I will not hold back. Okay, I'll try. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Under the referee's order, the second duel between the two officially began. This time, the first to attack was Wu Baoliang. The monstrous black gas raged again. Wu Baoliang did not intend to be entangled with Lin Yi, so he used his ultimate move. The surging black gas and sand instantly engulfed Lin Yi. The situation was exactly the same as before. Qi Wenhan and the others felt their hearts tighten. They believed in Lin Yi and were confident in Lin Yi's strength, but facing Wu Baoliang's ferocious strength, they were still somewhat worried. He was in the middle of the black sand. Lin Yi's first response was the same as before, which was to constantly dodge and dodge, nimbly evading the wild sand and fierce currents. Seeing this, Wu Baoliang could not help but cackle again. He had thought that his opponent had figured out some good move to counter his 1,000 wild sand explosive fist, which was why he was so confident. It turned out that nothing had changed at all, facing his 1,000 wild sand bursting fists, unless it was an expert who was much stronger than him who could use brute force to break through it. Other than that, any shortcuts were suicidal. No matter how good one's movement technique was, could one completely avoid so many wild sand and fierce currents? Even if one could avoid it for a while, could one avoid it forever? After all, this was the arena. There was only so much space to dodge. Being surrounded by so many wild sand and fierce currents, it was inevitable that one would fall into the sand whirlpool. Lin Yi's previous encounter was a living example. This time was no exception. Lin Yi seemed to be unaware of this and was still trying his best to dodge because he had experienced it last time. This time, he was obviously more skilled in dodging, and he managed to hold on in the black sand for a longer time. Unfortunately, all of this was in vain. In the midst of Wu Baoliang's cackling, Lin Yi was once again trapped in the sand whirlpool. According to the previous experience, the biggest crisis would come next, and this time, Wu Baoliang did not have the slightest intention of holding back. Go to hell! Explode! Wu Baoliang suddenly shouted coldly, and the sand whirlpool that surrounded Lin Yi suddenly froze. It was as if time had suddenly stopped, and then every grain of sand began to tremble rapidly, rushing to explode one after another. Lin Yi had personally experienced that the power of every grain of sand that exploded here was comparable to the power of high explosives in the secular world. At this moment, there were more than thousands of grains of sand that exploded. From this point alone, the name 1,000 Wild Sand Explosive Fist was already very modest and low-key. The continuous loud bangs once again shocked the nerves of everyone present. They were all looking forward to the scene of Lin Yi being blasted out again, and those who had a little sympathy had already begun to mourn for Lin Yi. However, as expected, Lin Yi's figure did not enter their field of vision for a long time. The crowd could not help but discuss among themselves. From the looks of it, this time was even more miserable than the last time, and there should be no bones left. However, at this moment, above the arena that was shrouded by the black sand, a huge flame suddenly soared into the sky. In an instant, the entire arena was illuminated, and everyone could not help but be dazzled. What was going on? Everyone could not help but look at each other, and at this moment, Wu Baoliang's expression suddenly changed. Something was wrong. Damn it, he's not dead. Wu Baoliang finally realized something, and his expression instantly became extremely ugly. Without hesitation, he manipulated the black gas to sweep up the yellow sand in the sky, and the 1,000 wild sand explosive fist surged up violently again, charging straight at the center of the huge flame. The loud bangs continued, and the earth shook, and the mountains shook. The entire Demon Cold Plaza seemed to be shrouded by a natural disaster. For a moment, everyone's expression changed drastically, and they were in a panic. No one knew what was going on in the arena, but a few people with good eyesight, such as Qi Mingyuan, Boundless Sea, and Zhao Shannying, could already guess that Lin Yi would not be defeated easily like last time, and was about to launch a counterattack. As expected, the black sand that Wu Bao Liang stirred up was no longer unstoppable. It was forcefully blocked by the huge flame and could not advance even half a step. That was not all. At this time, the huge flame was still growing at an extremely fast speed. In a short period of time, it had already occupied half of the arena with Wu Bao Liang's black sand, and they were evenly matched. This time, Wu Bao Liang finally turned pale with fright. In the huge flame opposite him, he suddenly saw the faintly discernible figure of Lin Yi. He was as dazzling as the fire god who had descended to the world, and people could not help but feel awe. This scene was seen by Wu Bao Liang, and so did everyone in the arena. They immediately exclaimed in shock, and there was an uproar. They were extremely shocked. Chapter 4476. Under the illumination of this huge ball of fire, Wu Bao Liang, who was originally hidden in the black sand, was vaguely revealed. For the first time, the audience could see the true faces of the two fighters with their naked eyes. Half of the black sand, and the other half was filled with fire. This was the scene in the arena at this moment. The shock and huge pressure it brought to the audience made them speechless for a long time. In the face of such an astonishing power, not to mention the Golden Core experts, even the nascent soul experts couldn't conceal the shock on their faces. Their hearts couldn't help but be drenched in cold sweat. If they were to stand in the arena, whether it was Wu Bao Liang or Lin Yi, they would not be able to withstand it, and they might even lose their lives. At this moment, everyone had the same question in their hearts. Were these two abnormal guys in the arena really Golden Core stage masters? Had the world gone mad? It's the same move. Zhao Shannying, who was in the audience, suddenly felt a little dazed. At the same time, Qi Mingyuan, Boundless Sea, and the others on the referee team also saw it, although the two sides of the arena looked completely different at first glance. If one observed carefully, they would find that the moves of both sides were actually the same. Even if they were not exactly the same, they must be from the same source. If one had to describe it specifically, it could be considered as two versions of the same move. The people in the audience who saw the clues were only shocked, but Wu Bao Liang himself, at this moment, was already in a state of shock. He was about to go crazy. How is this possible? How can this kid also know 1,000 wild sand fist? At most, others were just guessing, but Wu Bao Liang himself could feel it clearly. The move used by the kid opposite him was clearly a copy of his 1,000 wild sand fist. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Wu Bao Liang would never believe that there was such a thing in the world. The kid opposite him had just lost to his 1,000 wild sand fist half an hour ago, but now he actually used a copy of the 1,000 wild sand fist with just a turn of his head. Most importantly, this wasn't just an act. The other party was actually able to stand on equal footing with him. Anyone would go crazy if this happened to them. Paying someone back in their own coin was just a legend circulating in the martial arts world. It was simply impossible for it to happen to cultivators, and it was even more impossible for it to happen on this Heaven Stage island. In the past, if anyone threw out this kind of argument, The only result was that they would be regarded as a madman and drowned in the countless spit of the people around them. But now, Lin Yi had given it to Wu Baoliang. Everyone at the scene had also learned a lesson. They had no choice but to re-examine the old saying, "There is always someone better than you out there." Luckily, I didn't guess wrong. Otherwise, I'd be in big trouble this time. Lin Yi, who was in the middle of the huge firelight, let out a long sigh of relief. His heart was filled with excitement. To be honest, although he had deduced and assembled it countless times in his mind, it was not until just now. Lin Yi still had no idea whether he could successfully cast it or not. After all, he had never seen a similar move before. Even if he wanted to learn from it, it would not be so easy. Previously, Lin Yi only needed to try to imitate the 8 trigrams fire palm, 1,000 flaming kicks, and other martial arts skills. Basically, he could do it with ease. 70% of it was imitation, and 30% of it was self-creation. But this time, the 1,000 flaming sand fist was different. Whether it was Wu Baoliang's black gas or the sand, Lin Yi could not completely imitate it. Even Lin Yi couldn't replicate it completely, other than the core essence of the move. He had to improvise everything else on the spot. This difficulty was as high as ascending to the sky, but fortunately, the strong foundation of the 5 elements and 7 attributes was not just for show. Coupled with his strong creativity and the fact that he deliberately did not directly make a move just now. Instead, he once again stood in the black gas and sand to observe and feel. After verifying his guess, Lin Yi finally successfully cast the 1,000 flaming sand fist. Of course, after changing its appearance like this move could no longer be regarded as a pure 1,000 flaming sand fist. Lin Yi decided to change it to a more appropriate name, 1,000 flaming sand fist. Wu Baoliang watched helplessly as his opponent's aura became stronger and stronger, and the giant flames occupied more and more of the arena. He could no longer hold back. If this continued, his authentic 1,000 wild sand burst fist might really be defeated by his opponent's imitation. Pretentious, it must be pretentious. Wu Baoliang suddenly laughed hysterically. His blurry figure shrouded in the black gas and sand became more and more strange. He roared loudly, "You fool, even if you can imitate it, so what? It's just a facade. Do you think you can scare me like this? TSK, TSK, you don't understand the essence of the 1,000 flaming sand fist at all. How dare you use such a lousy move to fight with me? You're hopelessly stupid." Everyone in the arena could not help but frown when they heard this. Although Lin Yi's sudden move was indeed shocking, they still thought that Wu Baoliang had a higher chance of winning. After all, this was the authentic original version. If they really fought, there was no reason for him to lose to a temporary imitation. However, now that they saw Wu Baoliang's hysterical appearance, everyone quietly changed their opinion. In a battle between masters, it was a taboo to be impatient. It didn't matter if Lin Yi knew this move from the start or if he was just imitating it. It didn't matter if he had truly grasped the essence of it. At least from the point of Wu Baoliang panicking, Lin Yi clearly had the upper hand. Just as everyone was discussing, Wu Baoliang's crazy laughter came from the arena again. "Since you want to imitate, then I'll be merciful and teach you what the essence of the 1,000 flaming sand fist is. Explode." Accompanied by Wu Baoliang's maniacal laughter, a familiar loud bang once again exploded out of nowhere in the arena. As he did not hold back this time, the arena, which had been set up with layers of powerful defensive formations, could not withstand it. Cracks that were visible to the naked eye appeared on the arena, and they rapidly expanded, covering the entire arena. Full power, 1,000 flaming sand fist. This was the true essence of the 1,000 flaming sand fist. Even though Lin Yi imitated it so well, Wu Bao Liang did not believe that Lin Yi could really master this most important essence. After all, this was not an ordinary method. Not only did he need to master the key tricks, but he also had to go through special training. He had to train hard for at least a few decades to reach a sufficient level of mastery before he could be sure of success. Chapter 4477, All Living Things Annihilation, was the martial skill that Wu Bao Liang had been practicing ever since he started his cultivation. The principle was to let all the objects within the range of his control collide and kill each other. This was the prerequisite for practicing the Thousand Violent Sand Fist. This was because the Violent Sand Thousand Bursting Fist's final 1,000 heavy explosions was the most crucial step in controlling the thousands of grains of devil chi to collide with each other, producing an astonishing power. The angle, position, speed, and strength must all be perfectly grasped. If there was a mistake in any of these steps, it would lead to failure. The difficulty of this was imaginable. Wu Bao Liang believed that his cultivation talent was extremely high, but even he had to practice for decades before he barely grasped the trick. Only then could he successfully practice such a shocking move like the 1,000 Explosive Sand Fist. Anyone, even the most talented genius, wanting to master the Violent Sand Thousand Bursting Fist in one go was just a pipe dream. It was absolutely impossible. However, Lin Yi's shout came from the giant flame, and it instantly overturned Wu Bao Liang's outlook on life. This guy even imitated this step, explode. As soon as Lin Yi's voice fell, endless explosions came from the giant flame at the same time. Its power was so shocking that it was even more powerful than Wu Bao Liang's original version. At this moment, the black sand and the giant flame exploded at the same time. The aftermath and airwaves produced by the collision of the two sides instantly swept through the entire demon lung square. A large number of spectators who could not stand steadily were forcibly sent flying. The scene was extremely chaotic. At the same time, accompanied by a cracking sound, the ring that was meticulously reinforced by multiple layers of protective arrays actually collapsed directly and became a pile of ruins. The audience was in an uproar. It was not because the arena had collapsed, but because the winner of the duel had finally been decided. Wu Bao Liang's black sand could not withstand the soaring flame that was growing stronger and stronger. In the blink of an eye, it was like a landslide, and it was directly engulfed into nothingness. Impossible. No. Wu Bao Liang could not even finish his sentence before he was blasted away by the strong impact of the soaring flames. He fell hundreds of feet away, and his entire body was charred black. He was in an indescribably miserable state. After a while, the dazzling fire gradually dissipated, and Lin Yi's figure slowly appeared in the ruins of the arena. In the afterglow of the light, it was as if the god of fire had descended to the world. Perhaps it was because he had just used the raging flame 1,000 bursts fist. At this moment, Lin Yi's aura was no longer as calm and collected as before. Instead, it had become extremely fierce and domineering. Even someone like Boundless Sea didn't dare to look him in the eye. He was simply too domineering. I hereby announce that the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency has won. You may now challenge your next opponent. Amidst the silence, the referee was the first to react and announce the result. Only then did everyone recover from the shock, and their faces were full of colorful expressions, especially Chung, Haonan, Long Kiba, and Boundless Sea. These guys who thought that Wu Bao Liang could definitely defeat Lin Yi had ugly expressions on their faces, and they could not say a word for a long time. Meanwhile, Qi Wenhan and the others instantly burst into thunderous cheers. Before Lin Yi went on stage again, they were already prepared to face defeat. In their eyes, as long as nothing happened to Lin Yi, this would be considered a success. Who would have thought that Lin Yi would be so heaven-defying? He actually used his opponent's finishing move to forcibly defeat his opponent. Lin Yi stood in the ruins of the arena, and his gaze slowly fell on Wu Bao Liang. Although this guy was blasted away and looked quite miserable, he was far from being seriously injured to the point of death. Against a heartless person like Wu Bao Liang, Lin Yi clearly had no intention of holding back. However, this was his first time using the Raging Flame Thousand Bursts Fist. It was already good enough that he could successfully execute it, but he still could not completely control this newly created move. Whether it was power or timing, he was still lacking. What a pity! Lin Yi shook his head faintly. It was a bit of a shame that he wasn't able to kill the guy in one go, but it wasn't a big deal. He turned to the judges and spoke up. I've decided to challenge the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. There was another uproar. The audience could not help but feel that they did not come for nothing today. They had witnessed the heaven-defying strength of two super golden core experts. Just a moment ago, Wu Bao Liang had taken advantage of them and was prepared to trample the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to death. In the blink of an eye, the tables were turned. This kind of grudge situation had always been the most popular topic of discussion in the streets. Qi Wenhan and the others did not have any objections to Lin Yi's decision. Although they were somewhat worried that Lin Yi would not be able to continue the challenge, if they had the same strength, they would definitely make the same decision. The South Continent Sea had never been a place of benevolence and righteousness. Moreover, the other party was an old enemy with a deep grudge. If they did not take this opportunity to trample him to death, there would be endless troubles in the future. In contrast, the faces of the people from the Dragon Boat Escort Agency were much uglier, especially Long Kiba and Cheng Haonan. They were gnashing their teeth in hatred. They still could not accept the reality that Wu Bao Liang, whose strength was comparable to a middle-stage nascent soul expert, was defeated by Lin Yi. What should we do? Long Kiba looked at Cheng Haonan. Because he firmly believed that Wu Bao Liang was invincible, he did not expect this situation at all. He did not know how to deal with it. There's nothing we can do. I can only do it myself. Cheng Haonan's expression was cold as he looked at Lin Yi on the stage. He had wanted to get someone else to do the dirty work, but he had no other choice now. The situation forced him to do it himself. In order to avenge the death of his son, he would accept it even if he got punished later. All right, then I'll leave it to you, Deputy Escort Cheng. Long Kiba nodded. In name, Cheng Haonan was also a perfected gold core expert, but his strength was even stronger than Wu Bao Liang. It would be foolproof to let him take action. Wait, I'll do it myself. I was careless just now. This time, I must kill this bastard. At this time, Wu Bao Liang, who was in a sorry state, suddenly got up and walked over. He gritted his teeth and spoke. Although he looked quite miserable, judging from his current footsteps and state, he still had the strength to fight. Chapter 4478. In his eyes, Wu Bao Liang could crush all the gold core stage experts of the other escort agencies, but this was already history. Since this guy lost to Ling Yi once, of course, there would be a second time. What's more, he lost in such a humiliating way. Even if he fought in the next round, the possibility of him winning was really not high. Wu Bao Liang did not answer. He turned to look at Cheng Haonan, waiting for the boss of the Poison Eye Mercenary Corps to speak. I have confidence in the strength of the military counselor, since the military counselor has requested. So, then let him deal with Ling Yi himself. Cheng Haonan immediately went with the flow. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't personally deal with Wu Bao Liang. Now that Wu Bao Liang wanted to try again, there was no reason for him to stop him. After all, whether Wu Bao Liang won or lost, he would not lose anything. As for the points, that was something that Long Kiba cared about. It had nothing to do with Chung Haonan. Well, then I'll leave it to the military counselor. Long Kiba had no choice but to give up. In the face of Lin Yi's public challenge, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency could only rely on two people. One was Wu Baoliang, and the other was Chung Haonan. Chapter 4479. The entire Magic Cold Square was silent for a long time. Even the executive referee did not dare to speak. In a battle of this level, unless it was a life-and-death battle or someone fell out of the arena, the referee would not dare to intervene. The strange and tense atmosphere lasted for more than a moment. After confirming that Wu Baoliang was dead, the executive referee finally announced Lin Yi's victory. The audience burst into an uproar that had been suppressed for a long time. Everyone's respect for Wu Baoliang had now been completely transferred to Lin Yi, and it was even greater than Wu Baoliang. Winning the previous round could be said to be luck, but now he had won 2 rounds in a row. Even Wu Baoliang was killed by his own move. There was nothing more to say. There were so many masters present, not to mention the many Golden Core stage escorts. Even those in the nascent soul stage could not truly suppress Wu Baoliang. As for killing him with Wu Baoliang's own move, it was impossible. However, Lin Yi did it in front of everyone. Phew! Looking at Wu Baoliang's corpse on the ground, Lin Yi let out a long sigh. In this way, his trip to the South Continent was finally a success. Although a lot of things happened in between, and there were many unexpected gains and adventures, it was undeniable that this mission was a little too long. It was just to hunt down a demonic cultivator, Wu Baoliang, and it had taken several months. Even Lin Yi could not help but feel a little tired. However, if it was not for the improvement of his strength in the past few months, Lin Yi would really be helpless against Wu Baoliang, who was comparable to a nascent soul stage master. Now that the conditions were right, not only did he successfully complete the mission, but because he mastered the Raging Flame Thousand Bursts fist, his strength skyrocketed again, which was worthy of celebration. Wu Baoliang had been killed. The purpose of this trip to the South Continent Escort Agency was achieved, and Lin Yi could now retire. Moreover, he had already fought 3 rounds with Wu Baoliang. Even if he won in the eyes of others, he would have lost a lot of vital energy and would not have much combat power left. However, Lin Yi was still standing in the ruins of the arena. He looked at Chung Haonan from afar and said calmly, "I will continue to challenge the Dragon Boat Escort Agency." Everyone present was speechless, and they couldn't help but look at Lin Yi with a strange gaze. Not only was this guy powerful, but his personality was also so domineering. He had only suffered a loss at the hands of Wu Baoliang, but now he had killed Wu Baoliang. It was clear that he wanted to vent his anger on the entire Dragon Boat Escort Agency. What they didn't know was that Lin Yi wasn't interested in dealing with the Dragon Boat Escort Agency at all. He just wanted to use this opportunity to get rid of Chung Haonan. Ha! Young hero Ling is indeed a straightforward person. What a character! Qi Mingyuan sat in the judge's seat and laughed heartily. If it had been someone else who saw Lin Yi making such a decision without authorization, they might have felt a knot in their heart. However, Qi Mingyuan would not feel the same way. His personality had always been straightforward, and Lin Yi's behavior was to his liking. A man should be decisive in killing and take revenge. If he was Lin Yi, he would definitely choose to get rid of the problem at its roots. As long as nothing happened to the person in question, it didn't matter even if he failed and lost points. This was the aura that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency should have. In contrast, Boundless Sea, who was sitting next to Qi Mingyuan, had an ugly expression on his face. He looked at Long Kiba and Chung Haonan with eyes that were spewing fire. He wanted to skin these two bastards alive. He didn't hesitate to offend the other judges and think of a way to create an escort agency leader challenge just to create an opportunity for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency to deal with Ling Wan and the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. Previously, Chung Haonan and his group had said that it would be a piece of cake. But now, not only did they fail to kill Ling Wan and the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, their morale soared and their points rose higher and higher. Wasn't this the same as shooting themselves in the foot? If this continued, who could stop the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's rise? Didn't all of the plans that Boundless Sea had come up with become a complete joke? If the Four Seas Escort Agency wanted to rise again, they had to first get rid of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, and then use their trump card to get rid of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, killing two birds with one stone. But now, they couldn't even complete the first step. Even if Boundless Sea got rid of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, what could he do? The Heavens Equal Escort Agency was still high up in the sky. No one could shake its position. It was about to sit on the throne of the escort agencies, while his Four Seas Escort Agency was about to become history. This result made Boundless Sea want to cry, but there was nothing he could do. He didn't have an abnormal golden core expert like Lin Yi. Even if he did, the Four Seas Escort Agency wouldn't have the chance to jump out and challenge him. They could only watch, unable to do anything. The only consolation for Boundless Sea was that because the Dragon Boat Escort Agency had lost 2 matches in a row, their points had dropped by 200 points. They had just lost back all of the 200 points they had won, allowing the Four Seas Escort Agency to return to 5th place. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. Boundless Sea was frowning. As the target of Lin Yi's challenge, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was in a dire situation. Not only did they lose a super golden core expert like Wu Baoliang, their points were also in danger. The entire Dragon Boat Escort Agency was in a precarious situation. This time, they had no other choice but to let Chung Haonan fight personally. Even if he wanted to avoid it, he couldn't. Moreover, Ling Yi had delivered the opportunity to take revenge to him. How could he avoid it? With a solemn expression, Chung Haonan slowly walked onto the stage. This time, in order to take care of the audience, the conference had finally arranged for a backup challenge arena. Although the security measures were not as strict as the original one, as long as it wasn't like Lin Yi and Wu Baoliang's previous attacks, there shouldn't be a problem. Since you want to die, I'll be merciful and grant your wish, Chung Haonan said coldly as he looked at Lin Yi. Although he said that, he was still extremely vigilant. Although Wu Baoliang was slightly weaker than him, the difference between the two wasn't that big. Especially when the opponent used the 1,000-sand burst fist, even he had to be careful. If he was even slightly careless, he would suffer a huge loss, and he might even fail miserably. Chapter 4480. Bastard, I will make you pay the price. My son's death will be paid in blood today. Chung Haonan's already ugly face instantly turned livid, but he was much more shrewd than Wu Baoliang. Even if he was furious, he would not show it too much. If he was flustered and exasperated, he would only mess up and follow in Wu Baoliang's footsteps. Plus or minus Apex novel. Ha! Then you seem to have found the wrong person. Lin Yi's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not expect this guy to blame Chung Ketian's death on him, but he did not mention that it was the divine Nun of the Eastern Sea who did it. This self-deceiving ostrich mentality was really funny. Humph, if you didn't sow discord, would something have happened to my son? No matter what, you have to die today. As he spoke, Chung Haonan's violent aura suddenly calmed down for some reason. Other than his ferocious expression, he seemed no different from an ordinary person at first glance. Then go ahead and give it a try. Lin Yi was still calm, but his heart tightened. He could not help but re-evaluate the opponent in front of him with caution. He was not afraid that his opponent would become flustered or even mad. However, his current state was like a bloodthirsty beast suddenly holding back its aura. This was a sign that he was targeting his prey. It was extremely dangerous. Although he did not know his opponent's exact strength, it was enough to tell that Chung Haonan, the boss of the Poison Eye mercenary group, was far more difficult to deal with than Wu Bao Liang. Under Chung Haonan's influence, the domineering aura that Lin Yi had revealed when he killed Wu Bao Liang also became more reserved and deep. His intuition told Lin Yi that the opponent in front of him was not the kind of existence that could be crushed in one move. He had to be careful. The fifth challenge between the head of the escort agency, Ling Yi of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, against Chung Haonan of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Begin. After whetting the audience's appetite, the referee immediately announced the start of the match. As soon as he finished speaking, on the arena, the two figures disappeared at the same time. The audience was shocked. It seemed that both of them had adopted the same strategy, which was to strike first. The two silhouettes were extremely fast, and there were blurry afterimages everywhere on the stage. For a moment, many people couldn't even find their real bodies. Everyone couldn't help but be shocked and absent-minded. This kind of speed had long surpassed the limit of a Golden Core stage expert. In their eyes, it wasn't strange at all that Lin Yi had such strength. After all, his heaven-defying performance just now had left a deep impression in their hearts. What they didn't expect was Chung Haonan of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was actually an expert of this level. In the previous battle, Chung Haonan had been deliberately hiding his strength, causing everyone to think that he was just SOSO. Unexpectedly, this guy was only at the peak of the Gold Core realm. But in fact, he was also comparable to the masters of the Yuanying realm. First, it was Wu Bao Liang, and now it was Chung Haonan. Everyone could not help but discuss. This unknown Dragon Boat Escort Agency really had some hidden talents. Bang! While everyone was guessing, the two had already begun their first exchange of blows. Both sides did not use their trump cards right from the start and were extremely cautious in probing each other's strength. This guy was really strong. Lin Yi's heart sank. Although it was just a probing attack, the 29 styles of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm that he used was definitely not weak. However, it was easily blocked by his opponent. It seemed that he had done it with ease. More importantly, his opponent did not use any powerful martial arts. It was just ordinary punches and kicks. From this alone, it was enough to determine that Chung Haonan's absolute strength was definitely much stronger than Wu Bao Liang's. At least, his strength foundation was far from what Wu Bao Liang could compare to. Wu Bao Liang's strength lay only in his raging sand thousand bursting fist. As long as one could break this fatal killer move, one would find that his own strength was actually not that strong. However, Chung Haonan was different. His strength foundation was much more solid, and his punches and kicks were extremely powerful. Without a killer move like the Raging Sand Thousand Bursting Fist, someone like Wu Bao Liang would not even be qualified to fight with him. At most, he would be knocked down in one blow without any suspense. While Lin Yi was feeling fearful, Chung Haonan on the other side could not help but mutter. After fighting with Wu Bao Liang for 3 consecutive rounds, he thought that Lin Yi's vital energy should have been almost depleted. It would be amazing if he had 50% or 60% of his strength left. He did not expect him to still have so much vital energy and not show any signs of fatigue. No wonder he could kill the military advisor. This kid's strength is indeed extraordinary. Chung Haonan secretly frowned. Unlike an expert like Wu Bao Liang, who only pursued powerful martial arts, Ling Yi started with ordinary punches and kicks and had always been good at it. His foundation was much deeper than ordinary people, and it could be said that he was well versed in it. He could easily see the opponent's foundation with just a glance. If Wu Bao Liang's foundation was 10 points, then Lin Yi's foundation was at least 30 points or even 50 points. They were not on the same level, especially when both of their martial arts techniques were similar. Wu Bao Liang's defeat was a sure thing. No wonder the situation just now was one-sided. After a probing exchange of moves, the threat in each other's hearts instantly increased by a level. At the same time, they rejoiced inwardly. Fortunately, they didn't underestimate their opponent just now. Otherwise, they might really have suffered a great loss, and it would be too late for regrets. Looking at Cheng Haonan, who was still restraining his aura, Lin Yi's mind raced as he calculated the next strategy to deal with the enemy. According to his past experience, the better the foundation of an expert, the less likely it was to show flaws, especially the kind that could be fatal in one blow. Facing such an opponent, he had to be prepared to fight against a fighting machine because a fighting machine would not make mistakes. Similarly, people like Cheng Haonan would not make mistakes. As such, there were very few strategies for Lin Yi to choose from. He only had two choices. He could either fight with his opponent with endurance and ensure that he did not make any mistakes and wait for his opponent to make a mistake, or he could fight with his strength and use his most powerful killer move to end the battle in one blow. These two choices had their pros and cons. The former seemed more reliable, but it was extremely difficult. Once his endurance was not as good as his opponent, he would be the first to reveal a flaw, and he would be in trouble. As for the latter, it was extremely risky. Once he used this strategy, there were only two possibilities. Either he could kill his opponent in one blow, which was the most ideal situation, or he could let his opponent take the blow. Then, Lin Yi would definitely be unlucky and suffer a fatal backlash. Part 7. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 44-81. After a little consideration, Lin Yi quickly made a decision. He would first try to entangle with Cheng Haonan. Anyway, there was a continuous supply of genuine qi in the space of the jade pendant. In terms of endurance alone, if Lin Yi claimed to be the second in the world, no one would dare to claim to be the first in the world. Even if he faced Cheng Haonan, he had enough advantages. Moreover, Lin Yi's self-control had always been extremely strong. If he really wanted to do it flawlessly, it was not impossible. On the other hand, the second strategy was obviously risking his life. Lin Yi had never been a gambler. Unless it was a last resort, he would never gamble his life with others. With a plan in mind, Lin Yi's next move was naturally very clear. While using butterfly subtle steps to maintain his body movement, he used various martial arts techniques to deal with the opponent. Frenzy 8 trigram palm, frenzy fist, frenzy 1,000 kicks, etc. All kinds of martial arts techniques were used one after another. There was basically no pause. If it was someone else doing this, they would be the first to exhaust their genuine qi before they could kill the opponent. After all, no matter how majestic the genuine qi foundation was, there was always a limit. However, Lin Yi obviously did not have this concern. In contrast, Cheng Haonan was far less extravagant than Lin Yi. He had never used any particularly powerful martial arts techniques. He was purely using ordinary punches and kicks to deal with it. However, although it was said to be ordinary punches and kicks, the power was actually not trivial. Even compared with these martial arts techniques of Lin Yi, he was not at a disadvantage at all. The more Lin Yi fought, the more shocked he became. He'd never been in a situation like this before. His opponent was only using normal punches and kicks, yet he was able to fight him head-on when he was at full power. He even had the upper hand. If he did not experience it personally, this kind of thing was almost unimaginable. However, After a few stalemates, Lin Yi also more or less touched a little of the essence of the opponent's punches and kicks. The key was that this was not purely ordinary punches and kicks, but some genuine qi was poured into it. Of course, the amount of true qi Chung Haonan infused into each of his punches and kicks was not much. Otherwise, the gains would not make up for the losses. In that case, he might as well just use martial arts techniques. After all, martial arts techniques existed to maximize the power of true qi, and the amount of true qi Chung Haonan infused into his punches and kicks was far from the limit of martial arts techniques. However, although the amount of true qi the opponent exerted on his fists and legs was small, it was all used on the blade. Just that tiny bit of true energy had actually caused the might of his fists and legs to obtain a qualitative increase. And it was even to the extent that it wasn't the slightest bit inferior to most ordinary martial techniques. Such ability was simply miraculous. This Chung Haonan was indeed worthy of being the boss of the Poison Eye mercenary group. To be able to become a formidable character, he was indeed not simple. Although Wu Bao Liang's violent sand thousand bursting fist was powerful, Lin Yi was only afraid of the move itself. He didn't care much about Wu Bao Liang himself. However, now that he was facing Chung Haonan, even if the other party was an enemy that he had to kill, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a trace of admiration in his heart. This person brought him pressure. It was far above Wu Bao Liang's. Because Chung Haonan's momentum wasn't as astonishing as Wu Bao Liang's, the audience couldn't feel the strength of Chung Haonan as clearly as Lin Yi. Watching the fast-paced exchange of various moves on the stage, they felt that the two sides were evenly matched. Instead, they felt that the two sides were evenly matched, and they were fighting to their heart's content. Even Qi Wenhan felt this way, and he couldn't control his emotions as he watched. However, Steward Song, who was standing beside him, subtly shook his head. If this continued, young Hero Ling might not be able to survive. It wasn't just him. In the distance, Black Eagle escort agencies, Zhao Shanying, Qi Mingyuan, Boundless Sea, and the others on the judging panel were all people with keen eyesight. At this moment, in the seemingly evenly matched stalemate, it was clear who was superior. Although it wasn't very obvious, there was no doubt that Lin Yi was being suppressed by Chung Haonan. On Qi Mingyuan's side, a worried expression appeared on Boundless Sea's face. As long as Chung Haonan could successfully take care of Lin Yi, then the plan would go back on track. Everything would still be under control, and his 4C's escort agency would still have the chance to laugh to the end. Lin Yi's disadvantage wasn't obvious at the start, but as the pace of attack and defense became faster and faster, an opening immediately appeared. Although Lin Yi had the powerful backing of the Jade Pendant space and wasn't afraid of any qi consumption, the problem was that even the most convenient martial arts technique needed to store qi during the process of using it. It was just a difference in the amount of time needed to store qi. Using all kinds of powerful martial arts repeatedly allowed Lin Yi to maintain a huge pressure on Chung Haonan, but at the same time, he unknowingly exposed an unavoidable opening, rhythm. Every martial art technique needed to store qi, which meant that Lin Yi couldn't increase the pace of attack and defense too quickly, because there was bound to be a period of rest in between. No matter how short the time Lin Yi compressed, in the end, it was still unavoidable. In comparison, Chung Haonan, who only used normal punches and kicks, didn't have this worry at all. Chung Haonan clearly grasped this opening, so he thought of ways to increase the pace. Once the pace exceeded Lin Yi's upper limit, then the fight would completely fall into his control. The current situation was clearly tilting in this direction. More and more people gradually began to realize that Chung Haonan had the advantage all this time, and his advantage was rapidly expanding. Bang! Once again, the Wildfire 8 trigrams palm, which he was so proud of, was blocked by the opponent's normal punches and kicks. Seeing Chung Haonan's unharmed appearance, Lin Yi's heart couldn't help but sink. This was the 30 forms of the Wildfire 8 trigrams palm, and its power was not to be underestimated. Even Chung Haonan didn't dare to take it head-on just a moment ago, but now he could deal with it so easily. This was the difference in pace. Now, this pace had far exceeded Lin Yi's upper limit. Without time to store strength, it caused a powerful martial art like the Wildfire 8 trigrams palm to lose its original power. This was a very dangerous signal. At the beginning of the duel, Chung Haonan's aura was still very restrained, like a fierce beast withdrawing its claws. But now, Lin Yi clearly felt that the opponent's pressure was getting stronger and stronger. That extremely dangerous aura was also becoming more and more obvious, like the fierce beast was about to bare its claws. No, he had to quickly get rid of this rhythm, or he would lose without a doubt. Lin Yi wasn't an idiot. There was no way he'd stick to his original strategy in a situation like this. It was a dead end, and so the situation forced him to make a change. He'd bet his life on it, and he'd give it his all. Chapter 4482. It was better to be safe than sorry. Even though he had the upper hand now, he did not let his guard down at all. However, Lin Yi's next action made Chung Haonan's eyelids twitch. A familiar blazing flame soared into the sky. Lin Yi had used the 1,000 frenzied flame fist that killed Wu Baoliang just now. Although it was a new move that he had just mastered, in terms of power, the 1,000 frenzied flame fist was still above Lin Yi's frenzied 8 trigrams palm. It was enough to replace it as his trump card. Now that he had reached this critical juncture, it was time to show his strongest trump card. The 1,000 frenzied flame fist was extremely powerful. At this moment, Chung Haonan was too close to Lin Yi. He was almost instantly enveloped by it without any chance to react. Watching the two figures become blurred in the soaring flame, the audience could not help but be in an uproar. The scene of Lin Yi killing Wu Baoliang with one move had left a deep impression on them. In an instant, they all changed their views. So what if Chung Haonan had the upper hand? He had a powerful trump card that could turn the tables. No matter how big the previous advantage was, it was just fleeting clouds. Boom, boom, boom. One after another, loud explosions reverberated throughout the entire Devil Lung City. After witnessing the 3 shocking duels, although the crowd was already used to this kind of earth-shattering scene, they still couldn't help but reveal a look of awe. After all, if they were to face such a terrifying technique, they would definitely die without a doubt, and they wouldn't even have a chance to survive. Everyone thought that the competition would end here, and that Chung Haonan would follow in Wu Baoliang's footsteps. However, at this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "Look!" Following the direction that this person pointed, everyone's eyes fell on a figure in the middle of the arena. As they could not see his face clearly, they could not tell whether this person was Lin Yi or Chung Haonan. However, there was one thing that was quite strange. This person faintly exuded a layer of black gas. This black aura felt exactly the same as Wu Baoliang's, but the scale was much smaller. Wu Baoliang's black aura was overwhelming, but this person's black aura only covered a thin layer around his body. No one knew what it was for, but at least the audience could see it more clearly because of this. The frenzied flame 1,000 explosive fists were in full swing at this moment. However, the figure shrouded in black gas was like a ghost scurrying around the stage. His speed was so fast that it made people dumbfounded. And the most speechless thing was, even though this figure wasn't able to completely dodge the 1,000 heavy explosions, he was able to dodge over 80% of it. Even Zhao Shanying, Boundless Sea, and Qi Mingyuan couldn't help but sigh at his godly reaction speed. There was no doubt that the figure covered in black gas was Chung Haonan. Apart from not having a powerful martial skill like the violent Sand Thousand Bursting Fist, the strength that this guy displayed in other aspects was definitely at a super high level, especially the body technique that was mainly based on ordinary punches and kicks. He was in existence like a monster, truly intimidating. With just ordinary body technique, he was able to exchange blows with Lin Yi, who was using all kinds of powerful martial skills. Moreover, he was able to gain the upper hand and suppress Lin Yi in all aspects. This in itself was already very exaggerated, but now Chung Haonan truly showed everyone what it meant by there was no strongest, only stronger. Seeing the opponent quickly pass through the 1,000 heavy explosions like a demon god. As the distance got closer and closer, Lin Yi's eyes suddenly focused. He didn't dare to hold back any longer. Without any hesitation, he gathered all the fire crystals that were in the middle of the sky-high flames and detonated them at the same time. This was actually very dangerous. Even though the explosion of the fire crystals was under Lin Yi's control, he couldn't completely avoid this incomparably terrifying destructive power. He would still be affected by the explosion, but now that he was covered in frenzied flames, he could avoid some of the damage to a certain extent. However, even so, this was still a really dangerous move. It was inevitable that he would be injured, and it was completely damaging to himself. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Lin Yi would never do this. However, at this point, he had no other choice. Boom! A super shocking loud noise not only shook the entire Devil Lung City, but even the surrounding Devil Lung Sea was stirred up. It was a horrifying scene, as if the end of the world was about to come. As a result, those who were still stranded in the sea, who didn't know what was going on, all fled in panic, fearing that they would be buried in the sea. Even the surrounding sea was in such a state, and the spectators in the Devil Lung Square, who were watching from a close distance, were even more unlikely to be spared. They were affected by the airwaves that gushed out from the arena, and the whole square was immediately thrown into a mess. Those who were slightly weaker even turned pale and spat out a mouthful of blood, suffering internal injuries from the shock. The South Continent Escort Agency Festival had been held for so many years, and all kinds of life and death duels in the arena had long been a common sight. There were also some eye-catching duels between the strong. However, even a 5-on-5 team battle had never caused such a terrifying commotion, and it was unheard of for someone to suffer internal injuries while watching a competition. It had to be said that this year's South Continent Escort Agency Festival was destined to be recorded in the annals of history. At least, gold core stage experts like Lin Yi, Chung Haonan, and Wu Bao Liang were definitely unprecedented. Basically, there would be no one who could stand shoulder to shoulder with them. In the midst of the chaos, the soaring flames on the arena suddenly dimmed, and then a figure was seen flying out and falling into the panicked crowd, causing a commotion. "Brother Ling!" Qi Wenhan's eyelids twitched, and he quickly rushed over to support the person. It was Lin Yi. "I'm fine." Lin Yi smiled somewhat reluctantly. After taking a deep look at Chung Haonan on the arena, he immediately began to meditate to heal his injuries. In fact, the injuries he suffered this time were much more serious than when he was beaten by Wu Bao Liang. After all, he had used his true qi to protect himself in advance, and Wu Bao Liang did not use his full strength. However, this time he suffered a backlash when he used the frenzied 1,000 explosive fists. Even if he was prepared, he could not fully defend himself, so his injuries were naturally much more serious. Fortunately, the injuries this time were not from a direct hit by Chung Haonan, but from his own 1,000 crushing fists at the last moment. Therefore, as long as he treated his injuries in time, it would not be a big problem. Injuries were not a problem. The real problem now was what to do next. Although Chung Haonan, who was standing on the arena, had also suffered some injuries from the 1,000 crushing fists just now, because he had dodged quickly. His injuries were much lighter than Lin Yi's. The fact that he could still calmly stand on the arena was a clear proof. Chapter 4483. He would also not let go of this great opportunity to avenge his son. Everyone understood the simple logic of taking advantage of someone's weakness. Greater than over equal to therefore. Chung Haonan would definitely continue to challenge the Equal Heaven Escort Agency. The disparity in strength was obvious. Qi Wenhan would be courting death if he went up. This kind of death was meaningless, so Lin Yi could only go up himself. But the problem was, even if Lin Yi went up himself again, what could he use to deal with such a strong opponent? Chung Haonan was different from Wu Baoliang. Not only was Chung Haonan stronger, but he was even more undefeatable. Facing Wu Baoliang's 1,000 sand explosion fists, Lin Yi could still use it as his own, giving him a taste of his own medicine. This kind of miraculous technique could be used against Wu Baoliang, but against Chung Haonan, it was pure nonsense. Not to mention that Chung Haonan's super strong physical skill was not limited to one move and could not be imitated in a short period of time. Even if Lin Yi could really do it, there was no way he could use this method to fight against his opponent. After all, the difference in strength was too big. They were not on the same level at all. Using one's weakness to attack the enemy's strength, wasn't that asking for trouble? He could not do that. His previous experience had given Lin Yi a clear hint. Entangling with Chung Haonan and exhausting his strength would not work. There was only one way left, and that was to use the most powerful killer move to decide the outcome. Since the Raging Flame 1,000 Bursting Fist did not work, then he only had one last trump card, a super bomb that combined Dan Fire and Qi. This was the only solution that Lin Yi could think of. However, time was limited. At most, he only had the time to burn a stick of incense. Moreover, he had to spend some time to heal. In the remaining time, whether or not he could condense a powerful enough super bomb, Lin Yi had no idea. But no matter what, this was the last feasible solution. He could only wait until he went up on stage and think of a way to delay for a while. The situation was critical, and Lin Yi was using every second he had to prepare for the fight. Qi Wenhan and the others beside him were anxious, but they didn't dare to disturb him. They could only wait at the side. If it really didn't work, they could only let Qi Wenhan, the young master, risk his life to save the situation. At the same time, everyone's eyes were focused on Chung Haonan. Although they had already guessed what he was going to say, they still needed him to say it himself. Chung Haonan's gaze swept across everyone with a deep meaning. He deliberately paused on Lin Yi for a long time before he finally said, "I've decided to challenge Xunwei Escort Agency." As soon as he said that, everyone in the audience was shocked, especially Qi Wenhan, who had already started walking towards the arena. Hearing Chung Haonan's words, he couldn't help but stagger and almost fall. He looked at Chung Haonan with an expression of disbelief. As for Qi Mingyuan and the others, they were all shocked into a daze and couldn't speak for a long time. Xunwei Escort Agency, Lin Yi, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground to heal, raised his eyebrows. Why did this guy suddenly let me go and challenge Xunwei Escort Agency? Could it be that he had a deep grudge against the Xunwei Escort Agency? As for this Xunwei Escort Agency, Lin Yi basically didn't know much about it. He only knew that it was a middle-ranked escort agency. Its strength was neither strong nor weak, and it kept a low profile. It didn't have a particularly outstanding style, and it belonged to the kind of existence that was easily forgotten in the corner. If it hadn't been suddenly called out by Chung Haonan in public, not to mention Lin Yi, many of the senior figures of the South Continent Escort Agency Alliance might not have remembered it for a while. It turned out that there was such an unknown, invisible escort agency after being called out by Chung Haonan. the chief escort of Jinwei Escort Agency, was stunned for a long time before he finally reacted. His face suddenly looked as if he had lost his parents. He had a miserable expression as if his parents had died. There was no grievance in the past, and there was no hatred recently. Why did such a bloody thing suddenly happen to him? Looking at the chief escort's unexpectedly broken expression, Lin Yi knew that this was probably not a personal grudge, but Chung Haonan had changed his strategy. In fact, it was understandable after thinking about it. Lin Yi admitted that he didn't have enough confidence to deal with Chung Haonan, and Chung Haonan, who had just won a match, actually didn't have the confidence to say that he could defeat Lin Yi. Lin Yi's previous performance against Wu Baoliang left the deepest impression on others, and at the same time, it was also the most interesting thing to talk about. Lin Yi gave him a taste of his own medicine. However, Chung Haonan also noticed another important clue. This guy had an immortal physique like a cockroach, and an endless supply of physical strength and vital energy. Although it was very unbelievable, this was indeed the conclusion that Chung Haonan had just observed. Previously, after being defeated by Wu Baoliang for the first time, he only rested for 30 minutes. When Ling Yi went on stage again, not only did he not have any injuries, but his vital energy was also very abundant, especially the latter point, whether it was in the two battles with Wu Baoliang or the battle with himself just now. It was vividly reflected. This kid gave people the feeling that he was like a monster with endless vital energy, which could not be measured by common sense. Injuries could recover quickly, and vital energy was endless. Facing such a heaven-defying opponent, even though Chung Haonan had just won a match, he still didn't have any confidence in his heart. His opponent was not afraid of exhaustion, but he was, although he was a master of physical skills, and the amount of vital energy consumed in each punch and kick was extremely low, it seemed to be negligible, and he could withstand the exhaustion far more than ordinary masters. However, once it was sustained for a long time, his vital energy would eventually be exhausted. Just now, in the fierce battle with Lin Yi, especially when he was forced to use his trump card, the blackening of his entire body, at least 50% of his vital energy had been consumed. The blackening of his entire body was a unique skill that Chung Haonan had painstakingly practiced in recent years after he became a heretic cultivator. By stimulating the meridians and acupoints in his body with evil energy, it made his already strong physical skills even more invincible and domineering. It gave people the feeling that he had instantly turned into a cheat. Chung Haonan, who was in the blackening state, was enough to crush most masters at the peak of the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. Such a powerful move naturally consumed an extraordinary amount of vital energy. Therefore, unless he was serious, Chung Haonan would usually not easily use this state. Firstly, he was afraid that the evil energy on his body would be seen by others. Secondly, he was afraid that he would consume too much vital energy, which would lead to weakness in the future. Now, Chung Haonan had less than half of his vital energy left, and he was also injured. If he were to face Lin Yi in his peak state again, he would almost certainly be at a disadvantage. Even if he won in the end, he would definitely be crippled, and the consequences would be unimaginable. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.